Chapter 3589. The Scarlet Flame Holy King showed his prowess. A fireball that was even more dazzling than the divine sun appeared in the sky above the divine fire gate. The terrifying heat spread out, and the void around the fireball was silently annihilated. The terrifying divine fire exploded and instantly enveloped the entire sky, swallowing the silver-winged Holy King. Seeing this scene, all the celestial race experts who were watching the battle were stunned. What was the Scarlet Flame Holy King doing? Was he really going to fight the silver-winged Holy King to the death? One had to know that the silver-winged Holy King had the support of the demon Divine Lord. If anything happened to the silver-winged Holy King, not only would the Scarlet Flame Holy King be in trouble, but all the disciples of the Divine Fire Gate would also be in trouble. Rumble. Within the terrifying Divine Fire, there were sounds of wind and thunder. Within the Divine Fire, there were flaming Tao patterns that were faintly discernible, emitting powerful Great Path power. This was a Great Path Divine Fire, and it was a Holy King-level Great Path Divine Fire. A cold laugh sounded, and a figure directly charged out of the sea of fire. Rays of golden divine light broke through the void and slashed at the Scarlet Flame Holy King. Kill! The Scarlet Flame Holy King roared angrily. He waved the giant halberd in his hand, shattered the silver sword light that was slashing at him, and charged at the silver-winged Holy King. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The divine sword in the silver-winged Holy King's hand clashed with the giant halberd of the Scarlet Flame Holy King, and sparks flew everywhere. Two figures were instantly sent flying backward. Two Holy King-level powers of the divine way exploded, and it was terrifying. On one side, there was a sky full of divine fire that burned the void, and on the other side, there was a silver divine light that illuminated half of the sky. What's the point of fighting like this? The silver-winged Holy King stood in the void and stared at the Scarlet Flame Holy King with a serious expression. Their cultivation levels were about the same, and it was difficult to determine the winner. If there was a need to determine the winner, it might be a lose-lose situation. Even if one side won, it would definitely be a Pyrrhic victory. He took a look. If there's no point, then we won't fight. As the Scarlet Flame Holy King spoke, his figure disappeared in the void. The next moment, he appeared again, and he was above the silver-winged Holy King. Swoosh! The halberd in the Scarlet Flame Sage King's hand smashed down on the silver-winged Sage King's head. The entire void shook under this blow. The silver-winged Holy King couldn't help but be moved by this attack. Silver Moon Destruction. The silver-winged Saint King didn't think too much and immediately used his trump card. A silver full moon rose from the back of his head and welcomed the halberd that was slashing down. Boom! With a loud bang, the silver full moon instantly collided with the big halberd that was chopping down. The powerful force that erupted directly shattered the void. The silver full moon shattered in the void, and the silver-winged Saint King fell from the sky, directly smashing into the ground with a boom. As for the Scarlet Flame Saint King, he was sent flying high into the sky. The halberd in his hand trembled continuously, and traces of blood seeped out of his hands that were holding the halberd. Scarlet Flame Holy King felt his hands go numb. He almost lost his grip on the halberd and it almost flew out of his hands. The Scarlet Flame Holy King was extremely shocked. The silver-winged Saint King indeed lived up to his name. His combat strength was similar to his, and he was an extremely strong opponent. To the Scarlet Flame Holy King, it was definitely not an easy task to defeat the silver-winged Saint King. Boom! At this moment, the ground suddenly exploded. Dust rose into the sky, and a figure rushed towards the Scarlet Flame Holy King in the sky. Endless silver light pierced through the void. In the next moment, a ball of fire appeared on the Scarlet Flame Holy King's body. This ball of fire directly enveloped him, blocking the countless silver light that pierced through him. Without any suspense, the Scarlet Flame Holy King was once again forced back. The Scarlet Flame Holy King was both shocked and angry. The halberd in his hand danced continuously, and the power of a Saint King exploded from the halberd. Rays of silver light were shattered in the void by the Scarlet Flame Holy King's halberd. Roar! In the next moment, a terrifying roar sounded, and the Scarlet Flame Holy King actually revealed his original form, which was an incomparably huge scarlet flame python. The scarlet flame python's body was as huge as a mountain, and it was covered in a layer of divine fire. The scarlet flame python opened its mouth and spat out a stream of divine fire towards the silver-winged Saint King. The 3 pairs of silver divine wings on the silver-winged Saint King's back flapped at the same time, and a huge whirlpool immediately rushed out to meet the divine fire that was spat out. In the next moment, the divine fire was completely devoured by the whirlpool. Seeing this scene, all the experts who were watching the battle were extremely shocked. The silver-winged Saint King was indeed strong. Otherwise, he would not have been able to suppress the group of saints from the heavenly dragon cult, and those saints would have long rebelled. The first-rate forces in the ancestral god realm's eastern region had already been mostly wiped out by the Golden Rock Goddess. At this time, there were not many experts above the Saint King level in the eastern region. But even so, there were still some extremely powerful rogue cultivators in the eastern region, and many rogue cultivators were watching the battle. These rogue cultivators did not pledge allegiance to the Pang clan, nor did they pledge allegiance to Kang Q. The Pang clan wanted to rope in these rogue cultivators, but these rogue cultivators were used to being free, and they would not easily join any forces. The Scarlet Flame Saint King is going to be unlucky, an old man standing on the clouds said when he saw this scene. Not necessarily. The Scarlet Flame Saint King still has a trump card that he has yet to use. Another black-robed youth said. In the world of cultivation, one's appearance had nothing to do with one's cultivation. A white-haired old man might not have any achievements even if he cultivated his entire life. But there were some people who achieved success at a young age. Even if they cultivated for thousands or tens of thousands of years, they would still have a youthful appearance. Then let's see who wins and who loses. That old man said. At this time, the battle between the 2 great Saint Kings had already reached the point where the victor was about to be decided. Rumble. The huge whirlpool that the silver-winged Saint King conjured devoured the surrounding void, and a powerful devouring power instantly enveloped the Scarlet Flame Saint King. What? The Scarlet Flame Saint King's huge body flew towards the whirlpool and was instantly devoured by it. Everyone was dumbfounded. A powerful existence like the Scarlet Flame Saint King was actually defeated in an instant. The whirlpool constantly emitted the Scarlet Flame Saint King's roars. A powerful flame Tao energy exploded from the whirlpool. The Scarlet Flame Saint King wanted to break out of the whirlpool, but he was forced back every time. Overestimating yourself, haha. The silver-winged Saint King laughed and said. Soon, the Scarlet Flame Saint King's screams came from the whirlpool. The power of the whirlpool kept increasing under the silver-winged Saint King's control. The blood of a sacred king began to drip from the void. In the next moment, a blinding flame burst out from the whirlpool. The flame pierced through the whirlpool, and the huge whirlpool actually dissipated in the void. An extremely miserable figure appeared. This person was the Scarlet Flame Saint King. Again, the silver-winged Saint King said and was about to use the divine technique to deal with the Scarlet Flame Saint King again. Don't. When the Scarlet Flame Saint King saw this, he quickly shouted at the silver-winged Saint King, I surrender, surrender. Wouldn't you not have to suffer if you surrendered earlier? The silver-winged Saint King looked at the miserable Scarlet Flame Saint King and said with a smile. At this moment, the Scarlet Flame Saint King's body was stained with blood. His body was full of bloody scars, some of his bones were even exposed. He almost died. Fortunately, at the critical moment, he took out a divine tool and escaped with his life. There was no suspense in what happened next. The Divine Flame sect surrendered and was annexed by the Heavenly Dragon cult. The Heavenly Dragon cult's power rose again. After the Heavenly Dragon cult annexed the Divine Flame sect, the other factions in the eastern region fought to join the Silver-Winged Saint King. The Silver-Winged Saint King naturally hoped that these people would join him. He believed that the more the merrier. As long as someone came to join him, he would accept them. Just like that, many cultivators that originally belonged to the Heavenly Fire clan mixed into the Heavenly Dragon cult. There were also experts that were loyal to the Pang clan that joined the Heavenly Dragon cult. The Heavenly Dragon sect's Silver-Winged Saint King did not care who these people were and accepted them all. With the continuous annexation of other factions, the heavenly dragon cult's power became stronger and stronger. In just a few days, more than half of the eastern region was occupied by the heavenly dragon cult. This made the venerable monster beast feel somewhat incredulous. However, it was also a good thing for them. Gu Fei's clone had been cultivating in the City Lord Mansion's courtyard and did not come out. Gu Fei's clone was very special. Through cultivation, his cultivation realm could also increase. Gu Fei's body was still in the eastern continent's chaotic Golden Rock clan's ancestral land. Kang Q was also afraid that others would take advantage of the situation and raid his lair. Since Gu Fei was willing to help him guard the chaotic Golden Rock clan's ancestral land, he was naturally relieved. He believed that with Gu Fei's presence, no one in the entire ancestral god realm could attack the chaotic Golden Rock clan's ancestral land. One should know that Gu Fei's subordinates were real extreme grade supremes. Although these extreme grade supremes could not use the extreme grade supreme's power, they were still much stronger than the average quasi-supremes. At that moment, Kang Q led the eastern continent's divine race's soldiers to surround the Pang clan's ancestral land. The 10-terminal formation was almost ready. Those array masters were not to be trifled with. However, the 10-terminal formation was an ancient killing formation. The array masters brought by Kang Q were still busy setting up the formation. Not long after, the Pang clan's ancestral land could no longer gather heaven and earth essence from the outside. The 10-terminal formation isolated a part of the void. In the southern region, the siege war finally began. Under the leadership of the Sword Emperor, the southern continent's divine race army launched an attack on the Pang clan's remaining forces in Nantian City. For a moment, earth-shaking battle cries resounded inside and outside Nantian City. It was incomparably terrifying. The cultivators in Nantian City were no match for the southern continent's divine race army. No matter how many came out, they were killed. Chapter 3590. While Nantian City was besieged by the South Continent Divine Race's army, the higher-ups of the Pang clan were anxious, but there was nothing they could do. The experts of the Pang clan were blocked by the East Continent army led by Kang Q in the Pang clan's ancestral land. Just a single sword slave was enough to give the experts of the Pang clan a huge headache. The sword slave's cultivation and combat power weren't something that ordinary quasi-sovereigns could compare to. As for Kang Q, he was once an extreme-grade sovereign who had fallen from the extreme-grade realm. Such an existence was far more powerful and terrifying than a peak quasi-supremacy. In the entire Pang clan, only the 3 primogenitors could contend against it. As the 10-terminal formation was gradually perfected, the entire area where the Pang clan's ancestral land was located became filled with chilly winds and baleful auras. The entire region darkened. In the ancestral land of the Pang clan, the high-level members of the Pang clan were extremely depressed. They thought they could drive Kang Q and the other invaders out of the central continent, but they didn't expect this to happen. "Ancestor, what do we do now?" Pang Zhenhuan, the patriarch of the Pang clan, said fiercely in the ancestral hall of the Pang clan. 4,000. Should I use my trump card? Another elder from the Pang clan said. Let's wait and see. If we use our trump cards now, it will be disadvantageous for us. The ancestor of the Pang clan said expressionlessly. He couldn't help but admit that Kang Q was quite a character to be able to force them to such a state. Do you want to continue watching? The Pang clan's upper echelon couldn't help but be in disbelief. Kang Q's 10-terminal formation was about to be completed. Once it was completed, it would be difficult for them to turn the tables. Why are you guys panicking? The progenitor of the Pang clan was a little displeased. These fellows had cultivated for a very long time, yet they were still so impatient. They had simply lived in vain. Don't panic. Pang Zhenhuan said subconsciously. Looks like you've been living comfortably for a long time. The Pang clan's primogenitor helplessly sighed. The sharpness of those fellows had been worn away by time, which made him shake his head. No one in the ancestral hall dared to reply. Pang clan's primogenitor swept his gaze across the experts of the Pang clan. These people couldn't help but lower their heads to avoid his gaze. You can activate a dusty extreme path teleportation formation. Pang clan progenitor sighed. Thank you, primogenitor. Pang Zhenhuan and the others were overjoyed to hear this. After all, it was an extreme teleportation formation, not an ordinary one. Even if the Pang clan's ancestral land was enveloped by the 10-terminal formation, it could still be teleported from the ancestral land to the outside. At this time, the situation in Zhongtian City and Nantian City was extremely urgent. If they didn't send reinforcements, these two ancient cities would be breached. However, the Pang clan wouldn't easily activate the extreme downgrade teleportation formation. They wanted to make Kang Q think that they were trapped in the ancestral land. This way, the Pang clan would be able to make some moves in the dark. Since the primogenitor had agreed to use the extreme path teleportation formation, he would have to think of a way to defeat Kang Q's East Continent Celestial Race Army. Pang Zhenhuan and the other elders of the Pang clan gathered together and discussed. The ancestor of the Pang clan shook his head, stood up, and walked to the back of the ancestral hall. The back of the ancestral hall was a forbidden area for all the disciples of the Pang clan. Only the ancestor could enter. There was nothing in the back of the hall except a stone door. The closed stone door emitted an ancient aura, and there were even marks of swords, spears, and halberds slashing at it. The progenitor of the Pang clan arrived in front of the stone door and performed a few hand seals. Rays of divine light appeared on the tightly shut stone door. The divine light intertwined to form divine inscriptions. Rumble, the heavy stone door began to vibrate and slowly opened. An extremely pure heaven and earth spirit chi seeped out from behind the stone door. After a while, the stone door opened completely, and the ancestor of the Pang clan walked through it. After the ancestor of the Pang clan entered the space behind the stone door, it gradually closed. At this time, all the higher-ups of the Pang clan had gathered in the ancestral hall. After being suppressed for so long, they could finally fight back. At this time, Kang Q, who had set up camp outside the Pang clan's ancestral land, was also gathering the higher-ups of the East Continent Celestial Race Army to discuss how to break into the Pang clan's ancestral land. Lord Ancestor, we can't just trap those guys from the Pang clan like this. In Kang Q's tent, the Golden Rock Goddess said. It would be best if we can trap them to death, but if we can't, the second ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan hesitated. They did not want to be dragged down here by the Pang clan. Otherwise, they would not even be able to conquer the central continent, let alone dominate the ancestral god realm. A powerful clan like the Pang clan definitely has a supreme Dao teleportation formation in their ancestral land. We won't be able to trap them to death. The clan leader of the Black Snake clan said. What? Some of the East Continent experts in the tent were shocked when they heard the clan leader of the Black Snake clan. If that was the case, what was the point of setting up the 10-law formation? The supreme Dao teleportation formation could ignore the 10-law formation. In other words, the experts of the Pang clan who were trapped in the Pang clan's ancestral land could come out at any time. What if they launch a surprise attack on us as well? Someone voiced out the worry in his heart. I believe the commander-in-chief has a well-thought-out plan. Someone was very calm. One should know that Kang Q would never do useless things. Some people realized that Kang Q had never been defeated since he returned to the ancestral god realm. Whether it was the Golden Crow clan or the three great clans of the East Continent, he had always won. Many people were very confident in Kang Q, because even if Kang Q couldn't do it, there was still Ji Yufei behind him. Ji Yufei was someone that even those extreme Dao supreme beings were afraid of. The Fire Ape Primogenitor, the Sword Slave, and the supreme experts of the ancestral god realm all lowered their heads in front of him. Kang Q did not speak. Primogenitor, why did you summon us here? Peng Jingtian could not help but ask. The others quickly looked at Kang Q. There's no reason for me to summon you here. I just wanted to remind you that the Pang clan might be making a move soon. Kang Q said. What? All the Eastern Continent experts in the tent were taken aback. Kang Q glanced at them and continued, whether we can become the overlord of the central continent depends on what you do. Primogenitor. Peng Jingtian was puzzled by Kang Q's words. Why would the primogenitor say such a thing? The others frowned, especially the 4 Earth Spirit primogenitors. The first Earth Spirit primogenitor had already submitted to Ji Yufei and was released from the mountain and river cauldron by Ji Yufei. The Earth Spirit primogenitor and the leaders of the other clans naturally understood why Kang Q would say such a thing. After all, Kang Q was not their master. Kang Q was afraid that they would not listen to him. It's a good thing for us that the chaotic Golden Rock clan can become the overlord of the ancestral god realm. The first Earth Spirit primogenitor said after some thought. Yeah, our Black Snake clan has benefited a lot from following boss Kang Q, right? The leader of the Black Snake clan said with a smile. The leaders of all the forces in the tent nodded in agreement because it was the truth. The chaotic Golden Rock clan was actually in an alliance with them. Although Kang Q was the leader of this alliance, the Earth Spirit clan, the Black Snake clan, and even the Heavenly God clan could ignore Kang Q if it wasn't for Gu Fei. Kang Q was aware of this problem, so he invited the leaders of these forces to the tent to give them a heads up. If they didn't listen to him, then they shouldn't blame him for being merciless. Kang Q was now Gu Fei's spokesperson. Since Kang Q had said such words, the consequences would be dire if the Earth Spirit clan and the other powerful clans really went against Kang Q. No one was willing to offend Gu Fei because their lives were at the mercy of Gu Fei. Very well. Kang Q nodded. He was very satisfied with the leader's reactions. Of course, Kang Q's actions were a little suspicious, but he had no choice. Those who wanted to achieve great things should not be bothered by trifles. Then let's disperse. Kang Q waved his sleeve and walked to the back of the tent. The experts were a little displeased, but they didn't dare to say anything. They stood up and walked out of Kang Q's tent. Jingtian, come in. Just as Peng Jingtian was about to leave, Kang Q's voice rang in his mind. He was shocked, but he didn't think much about it and walked to the back of the tent. When Kang Q saw Peng Jingtian coming in, he took out a dozen formation boards and passed them to Peng Jingtian. He then taught Peng Jingtian how to use the formation boards. Peng Jingtian put away the formation boards and left Kang Q's tent with the Golden Rock Goddess and Peng Shi. Everyone had a backup plan, so did Kang Q. On this day, the soldiers of the Black Snake clan and the Shimon clan disappeared mysteriously. The remaining soldiers of the Earth Spirit clan and the chaotic Golden Rock clan were still besieging the ancestral land of the Pang clan. The 10-law formation was constantly perfected under the efforts of countless formation masters. From the outside, it seemed that Kang Q wanted to use the 10-law formation to trap the Pang clan. However, some experts of the central continent knew that it was impossible to trap the Pang clan in their ancestral land. However, Kang Q didn't seem to know that this method was useless. The other forces of the central continent were still observing the situation. Some experts were still waiting to watch the show. Although the Pang clan seemed to be at an absolute disadvantage, the Pang clan's strength was still there. It was hard to tell who would win. The atmosphere in the central continent of the ancestral god realm was very strange. Many people couldn't see the current situation clearly. Therefore, most of the forces of the central continent were still observing the situation. Chapter 3591. The atmosphere in the central continent of the ancestral god realm was very strange. On the surface, the big clan seemed to be at an absolute disadvantage, and it would be difficult for them to turn the tables. The god clan army of the East Continent led by Kang Q had the absolute upper hand, but some experts in the central continent still favored the big clan. In the central continent, in addition to the three superpowers, there were also countless other cultivation forces. The superpowers were superclass forces, and there were many first-class forces in the central continent. These were the forces that the three superpowers usually tried their best to rope in. In addition to the first-class forces, there were second-rate, third-rate, fourth-rate, and fifth-rate forces. These forces were still observing. All the forces in the central continent were very careful and cautious about choosing sides. After all, this was a major event that concerned the survival of an entire sect or clan. The consequences of choosing the wrong side were extremely serious. They could face the danger of clan or clan being exterminated at any time. Even though the big clan had suffered a setback and was blocked in the ancestral land by the god clan army of the East Continent led by Kang Q, none of the powerful clans in the central continent dared to choose to side with Kang Q. The big clan still had its strength. They could not determine that the big clan was going to lose just because a few of its experts were defeated. At this time, in the Nantien city of the southern region, the God Clan army of the South Continent, led by the Sword Emperor of the South Continent, had breached the city. The big clan disciples in Nantien city were in despair. The reinforcements they were hoping for did not appear. "Fight these guys to the death!" Tragic shouts came from Nantien city. The big clan disciples emitted a violent aura and pounced on the South Continent soldiers who had broken into Nantien city. A Pang clan disciple suddenly rushed out from an alley on the side of the street and pounced on a Southern Continent soldier. Then, with a loud boom, his whole body exploded. This descendant of the Pang clan actually held the South Continent's battle soldier and blew himself up. The power of the explosion was so strong that the South Continent's battle soldier that attacked Nantien city died before he could react. Seeing this scene, all the South Continent soldiers were shocked. Did these guys not want to live? Did they want to play with someone and explode themselves? The South Continent soldiers who had broken into the city felt their scalps go numb. These guys from the big clan were crazy. They could not lower themselves to their level. The South Continent soldiers quickly responded. A few people, a dozen people, or even dozens of people formed a simple battle formation and charged toward Nantien city. 4,000. They charged in. The big clan disciples hiding in the city suddenly pounced on them from time to time. Boom! With a loud bang, the 5 warriors from the South Continent were sent flying by the explosion. They rolled on the ground and groaned in pain. Naturally, the Pang clan disciple who had self-detonated was destroyed in both body and soul. The power of the self-detonation was undoubtedly huge. The descendants of the big clan in Nantien city had already lost all hope. Since they were going to die anyway, they might as well drag one of them down with them. If they could drag 2 of them down, it would be worth it. However, the Protoss warriors of the South Continent were also battle-hardened warriors. Once they were prepared, the Pang clan's chances of success were greatly reduced. However, the casualties of the South Continent soldiers were still rising. The Pang clan's people started a brutal street battle with the South Continent soldiers in Nantien city. The Pang clan's strategy was to deplete the South Continent's soldiers' strength as much as possible. It was a ruthless move. The South Continent soldiers were advancing toward the City Lord mansion of Nantien city. Suddenly, a middle-aged man rushed out of a pavilion on the side of the street and rushed into the group of South Continent soldiers. Boom! A deafening sound rang out, as if a clap of thunder had struck the ground. The entire void trembled. Although a dozen South Continent soldiers were on guard, they were still hit by the attack. They screamed in pain as they were sent flying. A few warriors were directly blasted into smithereens, and it was obvious that they wouldn't be able to survive. The other warriors were also severely injured and lost their ability to fight. Preposterous! When a South Continent general saw this scene, his eyes turned red with anger. These bastards were too despicable. Roar! The champion charged into a small alley on the side of the main street. Screams of agony rang out immediately. Several Pang clansmen hiding in the alley were killed by the champion before they could self-destruct. The general walked out of the alley with a blood-dripping saber. "All of you, get out of the city." An angry roar was heard. All the South Continent Protoss soldiers who were rushing toward the City Lord mansion of Nantien city stopped. After that, all the Protoss soldiers of the Southern Continent retreated out of the city in an orderly manner. These soldiers were experienced veterans. They retreated along the path they came from. This way, the chances of encountering enemies would be much lower. Even so, there were still crazed disciples of the Pang clan rushing out from all over the city, charging toward the South Continent soldiers and self-detonating. When they completely retreated from Nantien city, hundreds of South Continent Protoss soldiers died under the crazy self-destruction of the big clan disciples. Preposterous! Kill them all! Sword Monarch was furious. He immediately ordered the South Continent experts behind him. The South Continent experts behind him immediately soared into the sky and pounced toward Nantien city in front of them. The big clan disciples in Nantien city were still crazily charging toward the South Continent experts. However, The experts of the South Continent were different from the soldiers of the South Continent. They were all true experts. An expert clad in battle armor swung his sword, and a disciple of the Pang clan was cut in half before he could self-destruct. Kill them all. The experts of the South Continent charged straight into Nantien City. Dense explosions rang out continuously, shaking the entire Nantien City. Rumble. Nantien City seemed to be blooming. Explosions were heard everywhere, and violent forces kept erupting. The South Continent soldiers outside the city were dumbfounded. No one would have thought that the defeated Big Clan still had so many people hiding in the city. If the South Continent soldiers continued to attack the City Lord Mansion, more people would die. In this way, the South Continent Protoss army would suffer heavy losses. This was something the Sword Monarch did not want to see. Nantien City was only a city under the Big Clan. Although it was a very important city, it was definitely not as important as the Big Clan's ancestral land and Zhongtian City. It was already so difficult to attack this city, let alone the Big Clan's ancestral land and Zhongtian City. Soon, the remaining forces of the Big Clan in the entire Nantien City were uprooted. All the Big Clan disciples were killed by the South Continent experts who attacked the city. Even the few Pang clan powerhouses stationed in the City Lord's mansion could not stop the South Continent powerhouses and were killed in the City Lord's mansion. Chapter 3592. This was a very important day for the Central Continent's cultivation world, and even the entire Ancestor God Realm's cultivation world. This was because the ancient city that the Pang clan had ruled for countless years had been breached. That was an ancient god city that had been lost to the Pang clan. And the person who had occupied the ancient god city was the Sword Emperor of the South Continent. The Sword Emperor was only one of Nan Baishan's generals, but he was extremely awesome. As Nantien City was breached by the Sword Emperor, the South Continent's Protoss army finally had a decent stronghold. Soon, Nantien City's defensive formation was repaired. Buzz! The void shook, and a ball of divine light burst out from the City Lord's residence, covering the entire Nantien City. At this time, even a group of quasi-supreme martial artists would not be able to breach Nantien City. After all, it was the South Continent's Protoss army's turn to defend the city. Rumble. The sound of wind and thunder came from afar. Countless Protoss soldiers from the South Continent flew over, escorting an ancient altar. A stone coffin was placed on the altar. Beside the stone coffin was a general. This altar was like a huge mountain, casting a huge shadow on the ground. A terrifying aura spread out from the altar, intimidating everyone in the surroundings. Countless soldiers escorted the altar into Nantien City, and it floated in the air above the City Lord's residence. The news of Nantien City being breached spread, and the entire Central Continent's cultivation world was shaken. The Pang clan was actually able to keep their composure. After all, that was an ancient city, and its importance was self-evident. Some people were already waiting to see a good show, but unexpectedly, the Pang clan did not even fart after losing Nantien City. This dumbfounded all the major forces of the Central Continent. When the news reached Kang Q, who was outside the Pang clan's ancestral land, he was also surprised. How could those guys sit still after losing Nantien City? Kang Q felt that something big was about to happen, so he hurriedly transmitted his voice to Peng Jingtian. Peng Jingtian received the message and went straight to Kang Q's tent. An hour later, Peng Jingtian left. As Nantien City was conquered by the Sword Emperor, the atmosphere of the entire Central Continent changed. There were signs of a storm coming, and everyone's nerves tensed up. At the same time, Ji Yufei's doppelganger was in Eastern Heaven City. After the Heavenly Dragon cult was subdued, the area around Eastern Heaven City became quiet again. As the Silver-Winged Saint King and the other saints went on a campaign in the East Domain, the cultivation forces in the East Domain kept coming to join them. In a short period of time, the entire Eastern Sky City was filled with people. Of course, no matter how many people there were in Eastern Sky City, no one dared to go near the City Lord's mansion. Ji Yufei's doppelganger could peacefully cultivate in the courtyard of the City Lord's mansion. Even if the outside world was turned upside down, it had nothing to do with him. He didn't want to bother about Kang Q's matters. If Kang Q couldn't handle it, he would send a message back to ask him for help. Jiu Fei's clone hadn't received any news from Kang Qiu, which was a good thing for Kang Qiu. Although the sword slave was borrowed by Kang Qiu, the demon god was still there. Everything was handled by the demon god, so there was no need for Jiu Fei's doppelganger to handle it. Ancestor Luo Xiao was also borrowed by Kang Qiu. The news of Nantian City being breached spread to the East Domain. Naturally, the demon god also knew about it. After the demon god learned about it, Jiu Fei's doppelganger also learned about it. Good heavens, Jiu Fei's doppelganger couldn't help but be moved. The ancient sacred city wasn't that easy to break through. Those guys from the South Continent were quite capable. Just when everyone was wondering why the Pang clan didn't respond, the Pang clan finally made a move. Without any warning, the 200,000-strong Pang clan army directly attacked from Eastern Heaven City. At the same time, the 100,000-strong Pang clan army also attacked from Nantian City. Outside the Pang clan's ancestral land, the 200,000-strong Pang clan army suddenly broke through the void and appeared behind Kang Qiu's army. They then attacked Kang Qiu's army. Everyone was stunned. The Pang clan's method was really unbelievable. The Pang clan actually attacked 3 enemies at the same time. Boom! In Nantian City, there was a loud noise. The altar floating above the city lord's residence was blown high into the sky by a fist. An extremely terrifying figure directly walked out of the void. Behind him was a dense divine clan army. The mysterious expert led the Protoss army and appeared directly in Nantian City. For a moment, the divine clan army of the South Continent was caught unprepared. Countless soldiers fell from the sky like dumplings. What's going on? How did these guys come out? Angry roars came from the divine clan army of the South Continent. The experts of the South Continent were all stunned. No one expected the Pang clan to have such a move. The same thing happened in Eastern Heaven City. Unlike Nantian City, Eastern Heaven City wasn't guarded by the divine clan army. The 200,000-strong Pang clan army directly occupied the entire Eastern Heaven City, except for the city lord's residence. The 200,000 divine race soldiers of the Pang clan filled the entire sky, surrounding the city lord mansion. The one leading them was a white-haired young man. Indeed, he has some background. No wonder those guys couldn't defend Eastern Heaven City. The white-haired young man stared at a courtyard in the city lord's residence. A ray of light flashed in the depths of his eyes. An extremely powerful aura erupted from his body. At this time, all the cultivators in Eastern Heaven City were collectively dumbfounded. You! Was it necessary? Why did you send a 200,000-strong army? Lord Ancestor, let me retrieve that guy's head. An old man beside the white-haired young man said and directly pounced towards the city lord's residence below. The white-haired young man wanted to stop him, but the old man had already rushed into the city lord's residence below. Swoosh! Just as the old man rushed into the city lord's residence, a ray of blood suddenly appeared. The old man's head actually flew up. What? The white-haired young man's face immediately darkened when he saw this. The guy in the city lord's residence was really arrogant. He actually killed one of his capable subordinates in one move. You're courting death. The white-haired young man stretched out his right hand and directly grabbed the guy in the city lord's residence below. The person in the courtyard did not even raise his head. He casually waved his hand upwards. Bang! With a muffled sound, the white-haired young man's outstretched right hand immediately retracted. Interesting. The white-haired young man stared at the person in the courtyard and laughed. Then, an extremely powerful aura erupted from his body. The surrounding people immediately retreated into the distance. Chapter 3593. The Pang clan counterattacked. 200,000 celestial race soldiers charged out of Eastern Sky City. The void above Eastern Sky City collapsed, and countless celestial race soldiers charged out. All the cultivators in Dongtian City were dumbfounded. That works. The cultivators in Dongtian City looked at the densely packed Pang clan soldiers in the sky and felt their scalps go numb. Those guys appeared directly in Dongtian City, saving them the trouble of breaking the formation. Is that the Pang clan's backup plan? Someone thought of that. After all, Dongtian City had been ruled by the Pang clan for countless years. No one would believe that the Pang clan did not leave any backup plan in Dongtian City. Rumble, the heavens and the earth shook. The 200,000 god race soldiers formed a battle formation, and the black mass of soldiers covered the entire sky above Eastern Sky City. Come out and fight. In the sky above Dongtian City, in front of the 200,000 divine clan soldiers, a young man in white clothes stared at a figure in the courtyard below and said. The person in the courtyard of the City Lord Mansion did not move. At that moment, a middle-aged man appeared in front of the young man in white clothes. The middle-aged man exuded two auras. One was a demon aura, and the other was a mighty divine aura. Demon God! The young man in white clothes' eyes suddenly lit up. The Pang clan wants to counterattack. What a joke! The demon god said disdainfully. The guy in front of him was a strong opponent. It had been a long time since he met such an opponent. It made his blood boil. Although the demon god clan is powerful, it's nothing in my eyes. The young man in white clothes also said disdainfully. The two experts were full of anger as soon as they met. They looked at each other with equal harshness and looked like they would start a fight if there was any disagreement. Is that so? The demon god's eyes narrowed as rays of light shot out from his eyes. A cold murderous aura spread from his body. Old ancestor, don't use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Let me get rid of him. At that moment, an elder of the Pang clan came up. He was a quasi-supreme existence. The divine power emitted from his body was extremely terrifying. Your people are too rude. The demon god did not take the guy seriously at all. He did not even look at him. You're no match for him. Step down. The white-robed youth glanced at the old man and said. What? The elder from the Pang clan couldn't help being startled by the white-robed youth's words. At the same time, he found it hard to believe that he wasn't this fellow's match. He really wanted to retort, but he didn't dare. After all, although the white-robed youth looked young, he was one of the three progenitors of the Pang clan. All of the Pang clan's disciples were his juniors. If you don't believe me, then go ahead. You deserve to die. I won't save you. The white-robed youth said coldly. The big clan elder hesitated. Since the primogenitor had said so, the demon god clan fellow might really be stronger than him. Cut the crap. Whoever wants to die can come over. Demon god Venerable was a little impatient. These guys were really troublesome. The clan elder was shocked and angry when he heard that. He directly rushed up, opened his mouth, and spat out a dazzling swordlight toward the monster god. The white-robed youth shook his head. At that moment, the monster god stretched out his right hand and immediately caught the swordlight in his hand. At the same time, the clan elder also flew toward the monster god's big hand. Just like that, the Pang clan elder directly exploded and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Both his body and soul were destroyed, leaving only a swordlight vibrating in the monster god Venerable's hand. It's a divine tool after all. Thanks a lot. The monster god Venerable glanced at the white-robed youth and said. He then exerted force in his 5 fingers and directly suppressed the swordlight. The swordlight dissipated, and a red flying sword appeared in his hand. At that moment, the Pang clan's experts couldn't help but change their expressions. The primogenitor said he wouldn't save the clan elder, but he really didn't save him. For the Pang clan's primogenitor who had reached such a level of cultivation, family and what-not had long become indifferent. Then let's fight. The white-robed youth said. Tell me your name. The monster god Venerable stared at the white-robed youth opposite him and said. He dared not neglect the white-robed youth. The monster god Venerable was very excited to meet such an opponent. Pang-ji. The white-robed youth looked at the monster god Venerable expressionlessly and said. Monster god Venerable. The monster god Venerable said. He was the supreme among the monster gods, so he was naturally the monster god Venerable. At that moment, the surrounding Pang clan's experts consciously retreated far away. One must know that a battle between experts of this level was absolutely terrifying. If one was careless and got involved, both body and soul would be destroyed at any time. The 200,000-strong divine race army immediately dispersed and gave way to a large area. However, this was not enough, as the powerful force would definitely affect the entire Dongtian city below. Boom! Before anyone could react, the two figures collided with each other, causing a loud explosion. The next moment, two figures soared into the sky and actually rushed into the starry sky. Starry sky. 4,000 among the stars. There were continuous explosions as the two experts fought directly into the depths of the starry sky. The terrifying aura of destruction spread in all directions, shaking the entire starry sky. The experts of the Pang clan were inexplicably shocked. In the next moment, more than a dozen divine lights soared into the sky and also entered the depths of the starry sky. The remaining experts of the Pang clan immediately came to their senses and were all ecstatic. The experts of Dongtian city had been lured away by the ancestor. In this way, wouldn't the ancient divine city be their world? Kill. The generals of the Pang clan army roared and led their own soldiers towards the various strongholds of Dongtian city. However, at that moment, a shocking murderous aura suddenly erupted from the city lord's residence. In the next moment, a group of soldiers directly rushed out of the city lord's residence. There were only 5,000 soldiers in this army, and their leader was a young warrior wearing battle armor and holding a spear in his hand. 5,000 soldiers against 200,000 divine race soldiers. They were definitely at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, but their combat power was terrifying. Swoosh! Rays of shocking divine light rushed out from the battle formation of 5,000 soldiers and pierced through the Pang clan soldiers in the sky. Wherever the divine light passed, the soldiers of the Pang clan who were swept by the divine light turned into a mist of blood. The sky was raining blood. What? Seeing this scene, all the generals of the Pang clan were dumbfounded. 5,000 soldiers dared to come out and die. Then they would fulfill their wish. A general of the Pang clan led his 30,000 soldiers and charged towards the 5,000 soldiers below in a ferocious manner. The 5,000 soldiers formed a battle formation and rushed towards the 30,000 soldiers in the sky. Boom! The battle formation formed by the 5,000 soldiers instantly collided with the 30,000 soldiers of the Pang clan. In the next moment, blood rained down from the sky. Broken armor and broken spears fell from the sky, directly into Dongtian city below. What? The general of the Pang clan was dumbfounded. The 5,000 soldiers were like a sharp sword that directly killed their way into the battle formation of the Pang clan soldiers. The battle spears in the hands of the 5,000 soldiers continued to stab out, each spear piercing through a Pang clan soldier. The Pang clan soldiers were like dumplings, falling from the sky and stabbed to death by the 5,000 soldiers. The 30,000 soldiers of the Pang clan were defeated like a landslide. In just a few breaths, almost all of them were killed. This made the general of the Pang clan soldiers so angry that he almost vomited blood. Swoosh! Just as the warrior was about to make a move, a battle spear flew over and nailed the Pang clan warrior to death in the void. What's going on? The generals of the Pang clan were dumbfounded. No one expected the 5,000 soldiers who killed their way out of the city lord's residence to be so powerful. How is this possible? Everyone found it hard to believe, but they had to believe it because it was the truth. Facts spoke louder than words. Kill them. Another elder of the Pang clan, clad in armor, roared and charged towards the 5,000 soldiers. Holy venerate level energy waves erupted from his body. However, the power of the 5,000 soldiers merged into one and instantly erupted. Through the amplification of the battle formation, this power directly blasted towards the elder of the Pang clan. Boom! Two powerful forces collided in an instant. In the next moment, the holy venerate elder of the Pang clan was sent flying. Even the spear in his hand broke into several pieces. What? The combat power displayed by the 5,000 soldiers was truly heaven-defying. Since when did such a troop of soldiers appear in the East continent? Even the strongest soldier of the Skyfire clan could not compare to such combat power. Could it be? Some of the elders of the Pang clan thought of something and stared in shock at the figure sitting under a tree in the courtyard behind the city lord's residence. At this moment, the 5,000 soldiers were rampaging in the sky above East Sky City, killing countless soldiers of the Pang clan and causing chaos. That was 200,000 soldiers of the Celestial clan, yet they could not defeat a mere 5,000 soldiers. How was this possible? However, the impossible was happening. The experts of the Pang clan finally sensed that something was wrong. Then, they were shocked to find that each of the 5,000 soldiers had a cultivation and combat power infinitely close to that of a sage. This was too amazing. It was impossible for Kang Q to have such a troop of soldiers. The army of the Pang clan was in a complete mess. Countless corpses fell from the sky like raindrops. The streets and alleys of East Sky City were filled with corpses. Fresh blood dyed the ancient city red. This battle was the most inconceivable of battles. 5,000 against 200,000. This was such a huge disparity that no one would choose the 5,000 fighters to win. However, it was those 5,000 soldiers who defeated the Pang clan's army that claimed to have 200,000 God Race soldiers. Chapter 3594. Eastern Sky City was like a defenseless city. However, not long ago, Heavenly Dragon Great Sage from the Heavenly Dragon cult had tried to take over Eastern Sky City, but ended up dead. Heavenly Dragon Great Sage's attack had let everyone know of the demon god's existence. Eastern Sky City was not without experts. Today, the Pang clan suddenly launched a huge counterattack against Kang Q's East Continent Divine Clan army. 200,000 Pang clan soldiers broke through the void and charged into Eastern Sky City. However, after Pang clan's ancestor Pang Ji lured away the demon god, the commanders of the Pang clan thought they could take advantage of the situation and easily take down Eastern Sky City. However, this was the beginning of the tragedy for the 200,000 Pang clan soldiers. Just as the 200,000 Pang clan soldiers made their move, 5,000 soldiers suddenly charged out from the city lord's residence. The battle formation formed by these 5,000 warriors was extremely powerful. Every time they thrust their spears, they could kill a divine warrior from the Pang clan. Even if the spears in the hands of the Pang clan's god-level warriors managed to pierce these warriors, they would not be able to break through their armor, nor would they be able to hurt them at all. The Pang clan soldiers were out of luck. The 5,000 soldiers rampaged in the sky and no one could stop them. In a short period of time, the Pang clan's divine clan army suffered heavy losses. Wherever the 5,000 warriors passed, the celestial warriors of the Pang clan would fall from the sky like dumplings into a pot. How is this possible? Just as the Pang clan soldiers were about to collapse, an extremely powerful death aura suddenly erupted from the city lord's residence below. Then, 3 powerful figures of death walked out from the city lord's residence, followed by an army of countless dead spirits. Dead spirits? The Pang clan's elders were dumbfounded. Did the Lord of the Dead Spirits from the Graveyard of the Gods join forces with Kang Q? Some time ago, many terrifying dead spirits walked out of the Graveyard of the Gods and roamed the ancestral divine realm. Just like the Golden Crow ancestor, after falling in the Graveyard of the Gods for countless years, he turned into a dead spirit and came back to life. Right now, the Golden Crow progenitor was a huge threat to Kang Q. At this time, the undead army that came out of the city lord's mansion rushed towards the Pang clan's celestial race army. In an instant, they rushed into the Pang clan's army. A terrifying death aura spread out, and more than a dozen people were trapped by it. 4,000 The power of death instantly sucked away all the essence of the cultivators who were trapped, turning them into withered corpses. What? The eyes of the Pang clan's elders turned red at the sight of this. A silver-armored Pang clan elder charged towards the undead spirit army. Powerful quasi-supreme level energy fluctuations erupted from his body. With a sneer, the 3 leading lords of the dead spirits pounced on the Pang clan elder. A great battle broke out. For silhouettes moved rapidly in the air, causing thunderous sounds to erupt, causing the entire space to tremble. Swoosh! A cold light suddenly flashed in the air. In the next moment, the Pang clan elder's head flew into the air. Just like that, an extremely powerful elder of the Pang family was slain by one of the 3 necromancers, who possessed a powerful dragon bone. Wherever the undead spirit army that suddenly came out of the city lord's mansion passed, all life was extinguished. Countless Pang clan soldiers turned into withered corpses and fell from the sky. The essence of the Pang clan soldiers was completely devoured by the battle formation formed by the undead spirit army. Seeing this, the Pang clan soldiers in the sky dodged, not letting the undead spirit army get close to them. As a result, an unbelievable scene took place in the sky. Wherever the undead spirit army passed, countless Pang clan soldiers scrambled to escape. Even the Pang clan elders did the same. No one dared to approach the undead spirit army. The power of death condensed by the undead spirit army was too powerful. Even quasi-supreme beings could not contend against it. The 5,000 soldiers were definitely in cahoots with the undead spirit army. Under the impact of these two forces, more than half of the Pang clan's 200,000 celestial race soldiers were killed or injured. Damn it! The Pang clan elders were both shocked and angry. At this time, the Great City Protecting Formation of Eastern Sky City had been activated. The people outside could not enter, and the people inside could not leave. The 200,000 celestial race soldiers were trapped in Eastern Sky City. Just as the Pang clan soldiers were in despair, a dazzling divine light suddenly fell from the sky, violently bombarding the divine light formed by the Great City Protecting Formation of Eastern Sky City. The powerful divine power actually broke a big hole in the Great City Protecting Formation. The Pang clan soldiers trapped in Eastern Sky City were instantly overjoyed. They madly rushed toward the hole, wanting to escape this hellish place as soon as possible. At this time, the Pang clan soldiers were already scared out of their wits. They no longer had the strength to fight. Boom! At this time, there was a loud noise. The entire sky above Eastern Sky City suddenly shook violently. Countless Pang clan soldiers instantly collapsed into clouds of blood mist, their bodies and souls destroyed. The black-robed young man in the City Lord's mansion's courtyard made his move. With a single palm strike, countless Pang clan soldiers were destroyed. A giant hand that blotted out the sky appeared in the sky above Eastern Sky City. The undead army and the 5,000 soldiers had dodged in advance and were not affected at all. Only the Pang clan soldiers were unlucky. The dozen or so experts of the Pang clan stared at the figure in the City Lord's mansion's courtyard, shocked to the extreme. Who would have thought that there would be such a powerful existence in Eastern Sky City that killed so many of their soldiers in one move? Since you're here, then stay. Gu Fei's clone stood up from under the tree and looked up at the sky. At this time, the murderous aura in the sky was vast and mighty, alarming countless experts in the Eastern Domain. At this time, the army of the Heavenly Dragon sect had also arrived, surrounding the Pang clan soldiers who had escaped from Eastern Sky City. Silver Wing Holy King and Crimson Flame Holy King attacked directly, killing all the soldiers who had escaped from Eastern Sky City. Not a single one escaped. What? The Pang clan soldiers who had not yet escaped from Eastern Sky City were dumbfounded. They were going to kill every last one of them. We're going to die either way, let's fight them. Not bad, killing one is enough, killing two is a profit. The experts of the Pang clan roared and charged towards the 5,000 soldiers and the undead army, each of them emitting a dazzling divine light. Boom! With a loud bang, one of the Pang clan's experts who had rushed to the front of the battle formation actually exploded. Destructive energy erupted, actually blocking the 5,000 Pang clan's attacks. The other experts of the Pang clan also pounced forward, wanting to use the extreme method of self-detonation to drag a few people down with them. However, this method was useless against the 5,000 soldiers and the undead army, because they could not get close at all. The soldiers of the Pang clan were too powerful. It should be known that self-detonation would destroy both their body and soul. For cultivators, the destruction of both body and soul meant that they had completely fallen, and they could not even become ghosts. As long as there was a chance of survival, these guys from the Pang clan would not use self-detonation to kill their enemies. In the sky above Eastern Sky City, battle cries shook the heavens and the earth, causing the cultivators in the city to be extremely terrified. At this time, Eastern Sky City was already dyed red with blood. Countless mortals in the city hid in their houses, not daring to show their faces. At this time, Gu Fei's clone also attacked. With a thought, countless deadly sword lights rushed out from his body, piercing towards the countless soldiers of the Pang clan. Every sword light pierced through a soldier of the Pang clan, killing them directly. The murderous aura that erupted from Gu Fei's clone caused all living beings to be terrified. This was a heaven-defying sword technique that the sword slave had created when he was still an extreme sword sovereign. It was called the 9 Heaven Punishing Swords. The 9 Heaven Punishing Swords were also terrifyingly powerful in the hands of Jiyu Fei's clone. 8 or 9 of the dozen experts from the Pang clan were killed in an instant, and the remaining experts from the Pang clan were scared out of their wits. Some people directly crushed their teleportation talismans in an attempt to escape, but the talismans actually lost their effect in this place. In this way, the experts from the Pang clan felt despair, true despair. 200,000 divine soldiers had actually fallen here. No one would believe this if they told others. At this time, the 5,000 soldiers and the undead army were still fighting. Countless soldiers were killed one after another. The battle formation formed by the undead army grew stronger and stronger. The more essence they devoured, the more ferocious and powerful the undead became. The battle in Eastern Sky City was one-sided. The originally extremely powerful Pang clan had now become the target of slaughter. A heart-palpitating rain of blood fell from the sky. Roar. Just as the soldiers of the Pang clan were being slaughtered one after another, an angry roar came from the sky, shaking the entire sky. A figure descended from the sky, violently breaking through the protective divine light of Eastern Sky City and killing his way into the city. Boom! The two forces collided in an instant, and a terrifying energy storm swept out in all directions. Countless soldiers from the Pang clan were sent flying, then exploded in the void, turning into a mist of blood. Looking at the two experts who were confronting each other, the remaining experts from the Pang clan were surprised and delighted. The expert who descended from the sky into Eastern Sky City was their lord ancestor. The white-haired young man Pang Ji and Jiyu Fei's clone were fighting each other's Dao power, and the void around them was constantly annihilated. Your opponent is me. At this time, an angry roar came from the sky. The demon god had arrived. However, when he saw Pang Ji and Jiyu Fei's clone fighting each other's Dao power, the demon god retreated. Chapter 3595. The Pang clan's 200,000 God Race soldiers trapped in Eastern Sky City were utterly defeated by the 5,000 God Race soldiers and the undead army. They were utterly defeated. At this time, Jiyu Fei's doppelganger also made a move. But at this time, the ancestor of the Pang clan, Pang Ji, made his move. He directly broke through the great city defense formation of Eastern Sky City and killed his way into the city, wanting to rescue the soldiers trapped in Eastern Sky City. However, at this time, Pang Ji could not rescue the soldiers of the Pang clan even if he wanted to. Jiyu Fei's doppelganger directly blocked Pang Ji. The two great experts fought in the sky with their Dao power. The void around them was constantly being destroyed, and a terrifying energy storm swept out in all directions. All the combat soldiers in the surroundings were swept away. Some combat soldiers directly shattered in the void, turning into clouds of blood mist. Both their bodies and souls were destroyed. Pang Ji was shocked and angry. He had never thought that the 200,000 soldiers he had brought with him would be defeated by these guys in Eastern Sky City. Especially the 5,000 soldiers, each of them had a cultivation that was infinitely close to that of a sage. How was this possible? Even the Pang clan had to spend endless time and effort to cultivate such soldiers. These soldiers of the Pang clan were the ancient soldiers that had been sleeping in the ancestral veins of the earth. The battle formation formed by the undead army was also extremely powerful. As long as a soldier came into contact with the power of death that erupted from the undead army, he or she would become a dried corpse, and all the essence, qi, and spirit in his or her body would be completely devoured. Roar. Pang Ji roared madly, and all the Dao power in his body was stimulated. It was extremely powerful, and this level of power was infinitely close to the extreme path. No one dared to use the extreme path power at this time, not even Pang Ji. Of course, Jiyu Fei's doppelganger did not dare either. He felt the mighty power of the divine path coming from his opponent's hand suddenly soar, and in the next moment, he was actually pushed back. Pang Ji desperately forced Jiyu Fei's doppelganger to retreat, and then waved his big sleeve, collecting all the remaining experts and soldiers of the Pang clan into his big sleeve. He was about to soar into the sky and escape. However, at this moment, a fist appeared in front of him, smashing towards him. The violent power of the demon god erupted from the fist. Bam! Pang Ji hurriedly stretched out his hand to block the demon god's punch, but he didn't gather enough strength and was directly knocked down from the sky by the demon god's punch. 4,000. Pang Ji was both shocked and furious. In the next moment, he disappeared into the void. Trying to escape. Ji Fei's doppelganger stretched out his hand and slapped at a spot in the void. In the next moment, the void shattered and a figure fell out of the void. You've gone too far. Pang Ji spat out a mouthful of blood and glared viciously at Ji Fei's clone. Battle intent surged from his body, and his power of the divine Tao was still extremely powerful. TSK, you're the one who came to kill us, and now you're saying that we're going too far? What a joke. Demon God Venerable said disdainfully. Pang Ji sneered but didn't say anything else. That was the truth. Winner takes all. Since he was defeated and lost miserably, he had to accept the reality. Since you're here, there's no need to leave. It's not a bad thing for you to surrender to me. Ji Fei's doppelganger looked at Pang Ji indifferently and said. Ha ha. Pang Ji laughed. You want me to be your slave? Do you think that's possible? Ji Fei's doppelganger smiled and didn't say anything. How could such an existence be subdued with just a few words? It was absolutely impossible. The Pang clan's ancestor had lived for countless years. He was extremely powerful and arrogant. He had a high status in the Pang clan and even in the entire ancestral god realm. One should know that the Pang clan was one of the 3 superpowers in the central continent. The 3 experts were confronting each other, but the Pang clan's ancestor was at an absolute disadvantage. Whether it was Ji Fei's doppelganger or demon god Venerable, both had the cultivation and combat power to fight against him. At that moment, no one spoke. Pang Ji's forehead was sweating. He thought that the attack on Dongtian City would be smooth, but no one expected it to turn out like this. There were actually 2 experts in Dongtian City. Pang Ji finally knew why the Heavenly Dragon cult would switch to Kang Q's camp. Kang Q had dug a big hole for him to jump into. At that moment, Pang Ji hated Kang Q so much that he gritted his teeth. He had already cursed Kang Q's 18 generations of ancestors in his heart. Kill. Pang Ji roared as endless murderous intent erupted from his body. In the next moment, 2 figures rushed out from his body and directly pounced on Ji Fei's doppelganger and demon god Venerable. Doppelganger? Ji Fei's doppelganger was stunned. This guy also cultivated 2 doppelgangers? Bam! Ji Fei's doppelganger slapped forward and his right palm collided with the figure that pounced on him. An extremely powerful divine power came from the other party's palm, causing his right palm to go numb. At that moment, demon god Venerable was also fighting with the other figure. At the same time, Pang Ji directly broke the void and rushed into the chaos, instantly disappearing into it. He actually used this method to escape. Pang Ji also knew that this was the only way to escape from the 2 of them. Teleportation jade talismans were useless. However, if he escaped into the chaos, even if Ji Fei's doppelganger and demon god Venerable joined forces, they would not be able to stop him. In fact, Pang Ji had also successfully escaped. However, the 200,000 Protoss army was almost completely annihilated. Such a result was absolutely unacceptable to the Pang clan. That was 200,000 divine race warriors. Just as Pang Ji escaped into the chaos, Ji Fei's doppelganger had already killed the doppelganger that was fighting with him. Although Pang Ji's doppelganger was powerful, it was no match for Ji Fei's doppelganger. However, the doppelganger had successfully entangled Ji Fei's doppelganger for a while, allowing Pang Ji to escape. Preposterous. At that moment, demon god Venerable had also killed Pang Ji's doppelganger. Pang Ji had actually escaped into the chaos, which made him extremely angry. Since they don't want to surrender, then we'll beat them until they do. Ji Fei's doppelganger looked at the rapidly repairing space hole and said indifferently. Pang Ji was lucky this time, but he would not be so lucky next time. That's right, these guys still think they're the ruler of Central Continent. What a joke. Demon god Venerable said disdainfully. At this time, no one knew who the ruler of Central Continent was. So what if it was the Pang clan's ancestor? Didn't he still have to escape? Chapter 3596. The ancestors of the Pang clan wanted to kill Kang Q's army, but they didn't expect that Kang Q was already prepared. He dug a pit and waited for the ancestors to jump into it. Thus, tragedy befell the three ancestors of the Pang clan. In the Battle of Dongtian City, Pang Ji's 200,000-strong army was defeated by Ji Yufei and Divinity Yao. Only in the Battle of Zhongtian City did Pang Outsung, the ancestor of the Pang clan, fight the sword slave to a stalemate. His quasi-supreme power rippled in all directions, forcing all the cultivators to hide far away. In the Battle of Zhongtian City, the Pang clan didn't lose for the time being. Instead, they had the upper hand. The battle between the deity clan's army and the Pang clan's army was tragic. Soldiers' corpses fell from the sky, and blood rained down from the sky. A murderous aura filled the sky and earth, and battle cries shook the earth. The whole world was dark, and the smell of blood permeated every inch of the void. Zhongtian City was full of corpses falling from the sky. Fortunately, this was an ancient city of gods. The houses in the city were indestructible. Even if a quasi-supreme attacked with all his might, he wouldn't be able to destroy a single brick or tile in the city. This was a war between gods. The items on the bodies of gods were definitely good stuff for ordinary cultivators, especially those who hadn't become gods yet. Some cultivators in Zhongtian City risked their lives to pick up the spears, blades, and items on the bodies of the fallen soldiers. At this time, no one paid attention to these dead soldiers. They were all fighting with their lives on the line. The deity race's divine race army was actually evenly matched with the Pang race's divine race army. This surprised even the sword slave a little. One had to know that the Pang clan's army was made up of the elites of the Pang clan. They were extremely powerful, and the Pang clan was one of the three superpowers of the central continent. Normally, the deity clan wouldn't dare to start a war with the Pang clan even if they were bold. But now, they had no choice. The 100,000 soldiers were fighting with their lives on the line. At this time, it was either you die or I die. Only by killing the other party could they survive. In this way, the celestial race's warriors were 3 times more powerful than usual. The braver one would emerge victorious when caught in a crossfire. The celestial race's warriors, who originally didn't have the upper hand, were actually able to block the Pang race's warriors. The two battle formations constantly collided in the sky, and extremely terrifying energy fluctuations spread out. The entire sky seemed like it was going to collapse. At this time, all the creatures near Zhongtian City were terrified to the extreme. This was definitely a scene that could destroy the heavens and earth. How dare you sneak attack me? You deserve to die. High up in the sky, the sword slave continued to attack. 9 extremely terrifying sword lights shot out from his body and headed straight for Pang Outsong. Every beam of sword light exuded a shocking killing power. Wherever the sword light passed, the void was directly destroyed. Roar! Pang Outsong roared in anger. His long hair danced in the wind as a terrifying aura burst out from his body. In the next moment, with a boom sound, a 5-colored divine light rushed out from his body. Buzz! The 5-colored divine light began to circulate, and a 5-colored vortex appeared in the void. An extremely powerful devouring power immediately burst out from the vortex. The 9 beams of killing sword light directly slashed at the 5-colored vortex. The 9 beams of sword light tore through the 5-colored divine light and slashed at Pang Outsong, who was in the center of the vortex. What? Pang Outsong was shocked. He didn't expect his opponent's sword light to be so powerful. Swoosh! Pang Outsong left behind an afterimage, and his real body instantly dodged the attack. However, no matter how fast he dodged, he was still hit by the 3 beams of sword light. 3 sword marks immediately appeared on his body, and 3 waves of killing aura instantly invaded his body. Damn it! Pang Outsong was shocked and angry. He quickly circulated his secret art, trying to force out the 3 waves of killing aura that invaded his body. Once again, 5-colored divine light burst out from his body. This was the divine power of the 5 elements. This ancestor of the Pang race was actually the rare 5 elements divine body in the ancestral god realm. The 5 elements divine body was naturally close to the essence of the 5 elements. Cultivating the great Tao of the five elements would naturally be twice the result with half the effort. Rumble. The sound of wind and thunder came from Pang Outsang's body. Soon, a beam of sword light rushed out from his body and dissipated into the void. The first wave of killing sword chi was forced out by Pang Outsang. However, Pang Outsang didn't have the time to force out the second wave of killing sword chi because the sword slave was already charging at him. At this moment, the sword slave seemed to have turned into a terrifying killing god. The sword light of extinction in its hand slashed at Pang Outsang. Buzz! Pang Outsang stretched out his right hand, and a five-colored wheel appeared in his hand. This was the five elements wheel. He immediately activated the five elements wheel to block the sword light coming from the sword slave. Clang! The sword slave's sword light of extinction slashed at Pang Outsang's five elements wheel, and the two powerful divine powers collided. The five elements wheel was knocked away, but it managed to block the sword slave's sword. Pang Outsang staggered backward. The sword slave's sword light rushed out from his hand again, and in an instant, it soared tens of thousands of miles and slashed down at Pang Outsang's head. Pang Outsang stretched out his right hand, and the five elements wheel immediately flew back and blocked in front of him. The sword slave's sword light of extinction slashed at the five elements wheel again, and the powerful swordsmanship power was knocked away by the sword light again. Great fire burns the sky. Pang Outsang roared, and a five-colored divine fire erupted from his hand, instantly enveloping the sword slave. This was the divine fire of the great path of the five elements. Even a progenitor-level existence would be burned to death if they were burned by this divine fire. However, the sword slave's entire body was emitting sword light, and he was as terrifying as a human-shaped heavenly sword, blocking the divine fire of the great path of the five elements around him. In the next moment, the sword slave turned into an extremely sharp and terrifying sword light. It broke through the layers of divine fire and instantly slashed at Pang Outsang. What? Pang Outsang was shocked. He had already retracted the five elements wheel, and there were two sword marks on the five elements wheel. This shocked and angered him. He frantically activated the five elements wheel in his hand to block the incoming sword light. The five elements wheel burst with dazzling divine light, and the divine runes of the great path of the five elements emerged from the five elements wheel, and a powerful divine power of the five elements erupted. In the next moment, the two extremely powerful forces collided and exploded, forming a terrifying energy storm that swept in all directions. Chapter 3597. The sword slave and Pang Outsang, the founder of the Pang clan, clashed head-on, and an extremely terrifying energy storm swept out in all directions. Some celestial warriors who couldn't evade in time were swept away and torn apart by the energy storm in the void. At this moment, all living beings were like ants in the face of this energy storm that was sweeping out. Even the experts from the two camps could not help but be moved. The battle between the sword slave and Pang Outsang would decide the fate of Zhongtian City. If the sword slave won, Zhongtian City would belong to him. On the contrary, if Pang Outsang won, the sword slave could only escape. However, the sword slave's 9 heaven-punishing swords were too powerful. Pang Outsang was obviously at a disadvantage, and it would be difficult for him to turn the tables. Preposterous. Pang Outsang's forehead was sweating as he attacked. Since when did such a powerful figure appear in the ancestral god realm? As one of the super forces in the central continent, the Pang clan was naturally well informed. They knew all the experts who appeared in the ancestral god realm. However, the sword slave seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Before this, no one knew that there was such a figure in the ancestral god realm. No one in the entire ancestral god realm could match up to the sword slave's cultivation in the way of the sword Tao. Clang! The sword slave's sword light of extinction struck the five-element wheel again, sending Pang Outsang and the five-element wheel flying. Kill! The sword slave roared, and the sword light of extinction exploded. At this moment, he became one with the sword and displayed a sword aura that made Pang Outsang's heart palpitate. Fight! Pang Outsang gritted his teeth and madly urged the five-element wheel to attack the sword light formed by the sword slave. Rumble! The void that was enveloped by the five-element wheel was constantly destroyed. Endless five-colored divine light and five elemental Tao patterns rushed out from the five-element wheel. The terrifying power of the 5 elements obliterated the sword slave. The sword servant became one with his sword and transformed into a shocking sword radiance. It directly collided with the divine wheel of 5 elements that came crashing down. Boom! With a loud bang, 2 forces that were infinitely close to the extreme grade realm suddenly erupted. These 2 forces instantly turned into a terrifying energy turbulence that spread in all directions. 4,000. He walked out. The Behemoth clan and the Deity clan had retreated far away, but there were still a dozen or so behemoths who were swept away by the energy turbulence and killed. Everyone who saw this scene couldn't help but change their expressions. At that moment, Pang Outsang's divine wheel of 5 elements shattered. The sword slave's sword flashed and an arm fell from the sky. Roar! Following a frenzied roar, a figure with disheveled hair rushed out of the terrifying energy turbulence. This person's right arm was missing, and his shoulder was badly mangled. Only his left arm remained. This person was Pang Outsang. His divine wheel of 5 elements had been broken by the sword slave and his right arm had been chopped off. He roared and charged out. With a wave of his left hand, he kept the Pang clan warrior into his sleeve. Then, he shattered the void and disappeared into the chaos. How fast he escaped. The sword slave fell from the sky and landed on the clouds. The sword slave's figure emerged from the sword light. Pang Outsang, the ancestor of the Pang clan, reacted quickly. Not only did he escape, but he also escaped with the Pang clan's divine clan army. Just like that, a great battle suddenly came to an end. The Pang clan left behind nearly 30,000 corpses and fled. Meanwhile, the Deity clan lost close to 20,000 people in battle, and the number of injured was uncountable. At this time, the entire Zhongtian city was littered with corpses, spears, and other weapons scattered throughout the city. Some cultivators in the city risked coming out to pick up the loot, but since the battle was over, they went back to their houses and didn't dare to go out to pick up the loot. At this time, the Deity clan warriors rushed down from the sky under the leadership of their general and began to clean up the battlefield. The ancestor of the Pang clan was forced to retreat again, but this time, the Deity clan suffered great losses. This battle ended in a Pyrrhic victory. As the ancestor of the Pang clan retreated, all the forces of the Pang clan in Central Heaven City retreated. The sword slave and the Deity clan's warriors took over the Central Heaven City. This shook the entire cultivation world of the Central Continent, and even the entire ancestral god realm. Rumble, at this time, an ancient transportation formation platform in the ancestral ground of the Pang clan vibrated. Ancient divine runes emerged on the platform. In the next moment, a figure appeared on the platform as if passing through a layer of transparent water. Lord Ancestor, you, an elder of the Pang clan who was guarding the platform, was shocked to see the person on the platform. The person was in an extremely sorry state. One of his arms was missing, and his body was covered in blood. Ua! Pang Outsang spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed on the platform. The Pang clan elder outside the formation platform was shocked again. He rushed to the formation platform and reached out his right hand to help Pang Outsang up. Second brother, what happened to you? In the next moment, a figure appeared in front of the platform. It was Pang Ge. Pang Ge saw that Pang Outsang was in such a sorry state. Even his right arm was cut off. Who had the ability to hurt his second brother like this? Pang Outsang shook his head and said nothing. He waved his left hand and countless figures appeared in the void. This was the army of the Pang clan that he had taken back. Out of the 100,000 celestial clan soldiers, he had only brought back about 60,000. Moreover, many of these soldiers were injured. The army that Pang Outsang brought back was only about 40,000. Less than 50,000 were still fighting. This Pang Ge could not help but frown. Out of the 100,000 celestial clan soldiers, only these few were left. He was shocked that nearly half of them had died. Pang Ge shook his head and stepped onto the platform. He carried Pang Outsang and rushed towards the ancestral earth vein. He wanted to heal Pang Outsang's injuries because Pang Outsang's injuries were too severe. At this time, outside the ancestral ground of the Pang clan, the Celestial Clan's army was confronting the Central Continent Celestial Clan's army led by Kang Q. The leader of the Pang clan's army was Pang Ming, who was ranked third among the three ancestors. Although Pang Ming was ranked last among the three primogenitors, his cultivation base and combat strength were the most powerful among the three primogenitors of the Pang clan. Chapter 3598. The three progenitors of the Pang clan wanted to turn the tables, so they planned this counterattack. Unfortunately, Kang Q saw through their plan. Kang Q knew that the Pang clan wouldn't sit still in their ancestral land and would definitely take action. Therefore, Kang Q made preparations in advance. He set up a killing formation near the camp of the Celestial Race Army, dug a pit, and waited for the Pang clan to jump in. Pang Ming didn't disappoint Kang Q. As expected, he brought 200,000 Celestial Race soldiers to launch a sneak attack on Kang Q's army. Tragedy befell the Pang clan's army as they charged into the killing formation. Fortunately, Pang Ming saw that the situation wasn't right and immediately ordered a retreat. Even so, he still lost tens of thousands of Celestial Race soldiers. This made Pang Ming almost vomit blood. Pang Ming stared at Kang Q with bloodshot eyes. TSK. I thought that the progenitors of the Pang clan were powerful, but it seems like they're not worthy of their reputation. Kang Q looked at Pang Ming disdainfully. What? Pang Ming was instantly enraged when he heard that. He was about to make a move, but when he saw the smirk on Kang Q's face, he snapped back to reality. Goading. Pang Ming suppressed the anger in his heart and gradually calmed down. When experts fought, it was taboo to be distracted as it would give the opponent an opportunity to take advantage of. All of you, back off. Pang Ming stared at Kang Q and said. Hundreds of thousands of Celestial Race soldiers stood behind him with their banners fluttering in the wind. These soldiers were filled with murderous intent. Over 100,000 Protoss soldiers of the Pang clan immediately moved, retreating into the distant sky. The battle formation formed by hundreds of thousands of Celestial Race soldiers was definitely powerful. Although the Celestial Race soldiers of the East Continent had an absolute advantage in numbers, they didn't dare to attack recklessly. All of you, back off too. Kang Q ordered the Celestial Race soldiers behind him. Old ancestor, Peng Jingtian felt that something was wrong and said. Say no more, I'd like to see what this guy is capable of. Kang Q waved his hand and said nonchalantly, yes. Although Peng Jingtian was a little worried, he did not say anything more and retreated with the army. Hundreds of thousands of Divine Race soldiers retreated at the same time, like a dark cloud drifting backward. The killing intent of the 500,000 Divine Race soldiers converged together. For thousand, this murderous aura was even stronger than the murderous aura of the God Clan's soldiers. Pang Ming's expression changed upon seeing this. These fellows from the Eastern Continent were indeed different from ordinary forces. No wonder this Kang Q was able to unify the entire Eastern Continent, and even dared to contend for hegemony with me. If he doesn't have any capabilities, how would he dare to cross the river? If you want to fight, let's fight. Kang Q stared at Pang Ming, who was opposite him. The aura on his body continued to soar. Rays of divine light rushed out of his body and circled around him. Powerful power of the divine Tao erupted from his body, and the space around him tremored incessantly. Kill. Pang Ming made his move right away. Without any nonsense, a big hand directly grabbed towards Kang Q, who was on the opposite side. Wherever the hand passed, the void was annihilated. Clang. At the same time, a sword chime came from Kang Q's body, and a pair of divine wings spread out on his back. In the next moment, rays of sword light rushed out of the divine wings on Kang Q's back, and pierced through the big hand that was grabbing towards him. The rays of sword light directly collided with the big hand, and directly pierced through it, continuing to pierce towards Pang Ming. Pang Ming's body shook, and a ball of divine light immediately emerged from his body, enveloping his entire body. Countless rays of sword light that pierced through were directly blocked by the divine light that emerged from Pang Ming's body, and countless rays of sword light shattered in the void. At this moment, Kang Q's figure appeared in the sky above Pang Ming. With a roar, he directly slammed his palm down on Pang Ming's head. Pang Ming's protective divine light was immediately broken by Kang Q's palm, and Kang Q's palm blasted towards Pang Ming's head. Damn it! Pang Ming was shocked and furious. He quickly raised his right hand to block the attack. Bam! The two palms collided, and two forces erupted in an instant. The two figures quickly separated, but in the next moment, they rushed together again. Kang Q and Pang Ming were not ordinary quasi-supremes, and the power of the divine power they displayed was definitely infinitely close to the extreme grade realm. Boom! Bam! The dull sound of the collision shook the world, and countless cracks appeared in the void. The pitch-black spatial cracks were like black lightning, appearing and disappearing in an instant. Two waves of terrifying pressure spread out, and even the clouds in the sky were dispersed. Countless soldiers who had retreated to the distant sky still felt it difficult to breathe. Everyone was shocked to the extreme when they saw this scene. Primogenitor, in the ancestral land of the Pang clan, countless disciples of the Pang clan were also dumbfounded. They did not dare to open the protective formation rashly, fearing that the central continent god army would take the opportunity to attack. Third brother, Pang Ge rushed out from the depths of the ancestral land of the Pang clan. He looked nervously at the two experts who were fighting outside. He naturally wanted Pang Ming to defeat his opponent and kill all the soldiers of the East continent outside. However, he also knew that it was hard to tell who would win between the two experts. Kang Q and Pang Ming's cultivation was similar, and neither of them could suppress the other in an instant. At this time, the second primogenitor of the Pang clan, Pang Outsung, had already entered the ancestral earth vein in the depths of the ancestral land of the Pang clan to heal his injuries. Pang Outsung was severely injured. The killing power unleashed by the sword slave's 9 heaven-punishing swords was extraordinary. If it was an ordinary quasi-supremes, they would have long died. Moreover, the sword slave had chopped off Pang Outsung's right arm. Pang Outsung wanted to use the power of the ancestral earth vein to heal his injuries and recover as soon as possible. One must know that the Pang clan was at a critical juncture of life and death. At this time, a figure suddenly rushed out of the ancestral land of the Pang clan and appeared in front of Pang Ge. Lord Primogenitor, why don't you let my son look for Ji Yu Fei? The person who came was an expert of the Pang clan, Pang Tianming. This Pang Tianming was the father of Fatty Pang, whom Ji Yu Fei met in the Heavenly Region battlefield when he first came to the ancestral god realm. Originally, the relationship between the Pang clan and Ji Yu Fei was good, but Fatty Pang wanted to scheme against Ji Yu Fei for the sake of the clan's interests. After being seen through by Ji Yu Fei and Fatty Pang no longer had any friendship. At this time, Pang Tianming wanted Fatty Pang to look for Ji Yu Fei. Naturally, he wanted to sue for peace, but the friendship between Fatty Pang and Ji Yu Fei was long over. Pang Tianming also knew that it was all the clan's fault. If he had befriended Ji Yu Fei that day, they would have long become the overlords of the ancestral god realm. But now, it was too late to say anything. When Pang Ji heard Pang Tianming's words, he couldn't help but be startled. He knew that Fatty Pang and Ji Yu Fei had some contacts. If Ji Yu Fei could give face to Fatty Pang and let go of the Pang clan, it might not be a bad thing. For the living beings in the ancestral god realm, it would mean that they had escaped a calamity. All right, you can go and arrange it. Pang Ji waved his hand and said. Whether this matter succeeded or not, it was not a bad thing for the Pang clan. Yes, Lord Primogenitor. Pang Tianming hurriedly bowed to Pang Ge and then retreated. Soon, the extreme Dao-level teleportation array in the depths of the Pang clan's ancestral land was activated again, and a figure disappeared from the teleportation array. At the same time, a teleportation array in the Eastern Sky City's City Lord residence suddenly shook, and ancient Dao runes appeared on the array. What's going on? Is the army coming back? Several East Continent soldiers who were guarding the teleportation array were shocked when they saw the teleportation array shaking. They hurriedly came to the side of the teleportation array with spears in their hands and stared nervously at the void on the teleportation array that was shaking like water waves. In the next moment, swoosh, a figure passed through the void and appeared on the teleportation formation platform. Recently, Fatty Pang's glabella had been dark, and everything had been going wrong. His luck was extremely bad. Today, he was caught by his father and taught a lesson. Then, he was forced to see Ji Yu Fei by his father. Fatty Pang didn't want to see Ji Yu Fei because it would definitely be awkward if they met. Fatty Pang had wanted to use Ji Yufei that day, so his friendship with Ji Yufei was long gone. Now that he had come to see Ji Yufei, he didn't know what to say first. However, when Fatty Pang arrived at Eastern Sky City, he was greeted by 3 spears. 3 soldiers were guarding the teleportation array. "Who are you?" The 3 warriors stared nervously at Fatty Pang, who was still standing on the platform. The leader of the 3 warriors had already taken out a jade talisman and crushed it. A beam of divine light immediately rushed out from his hand and disappeared into the void. *T. Fatty Pang, who was on the teleportation array, saw the soldier crushing a jade talisman and immediately knew something was wrong. Sure enough, a long whistle was heard from the direction of the Eastern Sky City governor's mansion. In the next moment, a figure descended from the sky and landed in front of the teleportation array. "It's you." The person was startled when he saw the guy on the teleportation array. It was that damn Fatty Pang. "Greetings, Senior." Fatty Pang didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly bowed to the demon god. "Greetings, my ass. What are you doing here?" The demon god really didn't want to see Fatty Pang, so he naturally didn't treat him nicely. "I'm here to see Ji Yufei." Fatty Pang didn't hide his purpose of coming. "You want to see Master?" The demon god immediately thought of something when he heard that. "You want to see me?" At that moment, a voice was heard. Everyone hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice and saw a figure walking from afar to the teleportation array. Chapter 3599. Fatty Pang stepped in. He felt very apologetic towards Ji Yufei. If he hadn't succumbed to the power of his family and wanted to use Ji Yufei, he wouldn't have gotten into such an unpleasant relationship with Ji Yufei. If he could gain Ji Yufei's support, the Pang clan would definitely be able to dominate the entire ancestral god realm. Just look at the Chaos Golden Rock clan. The Chaos Golden Rock clan was only a small clan in the ancestral god realm. Before Kang Q, their ancestor, returned, the Chaos Golden Rock clan was almost wiped out by the Golden Crow clan. After Kang Q's return, the Chaos Golden Rock clan not only defeated the Golden Crow clan with Ji Yufei's support, but also helped the Chaos Golden Rock clan unify the Eastern continent. The Chaos Golden Rock clan became the absolute overlord of the Eastern continent. When Fatty Pang heard this news, he was dumbfounded. It was a great opportunity for him to rise to the top, but he had missed it just like that. If he had withstood the pressure from his family and continued to be on good terms with Ji Yufei and received Ji Yufei's support, he would have risen to the top long ago. Fatty Pang was actually just a small figure in the Pang clan. Many of the big figures in the clan did not even know of his existence. However, at this time, when the Pang clan was in a precarious situation, someone remembered Fatty Pang and went to find Fatty Pang's father. At this time, Fatty Pang had no choice but to see Ji Yufei. At this time, he arrived at Eastern Sky City and saw Ji Yufei. To be more precise, he was just a clone of Ji Yufei. Of course, although it was a clone, it was still Ji Yufei, wasn't it? Ji Yufei's clone did not invite Fatty Pang into the City Lord residence. Instead, he directly met Fatty Pang in front of the teleportation formation. "Why are you looking for me?" Ji Yufei's clone said indifferently. After all, he had a friendship with Fatty Pang. Although they could no longer be friends, he did not want to become enemies with Fatty Pang. He did not want things to go this far. "Yeah. Nothing much, I just came to take a look," Fatty Pang said with some embarrassment. "Nothing much? Then let's go," Ji Yufei's doppelganger said as he turned to leave. Everyone knew that the Pang clan was about to be destroyed by Kang Q, yet this guy still said that he was fine. In this way, Ji Yufei's doppelganger didn't really dislike Fatty Pang. "Don't." Seeing that Ji Yufei's clone was about to leave, Fatty Pang immediately panicked. "Fellow Daoist Ji, can you spare my Pang clan?" Fatty Pang was afraid that Ji Yufei's doppelganger had really left. "What are you talking about?" When Ji Yufei's clone heard this, he stopped. He turned around and said to Fatty Pang, "I didn't do anything to your Pang clan, so why should I let you go? It seems like it was your Pang clan that attacked me." Fellow Daoist Ji, this, Fatty Pang was startled. Ji Yufei's doppelganger was right. Ji Yufei's doppelganger did not directly attack the Pang clan. However, The entire ancestral god realm now knew that the chaotic Golden Rock clan had Gu Fei's support, which was why they could develop so quickly. Without Gu Fei's support, the chaotic Golden Rock clan wouldn't be as glorious as it was today. Alright, if there's nothing else, please go back. Gu Fei's doppelganger waved his big sleeves and was about to leave. Fellow Daoist Gu, I beg you, please leave the Pang clan a way out. Fatty Pang was really panicking. The Pang clan was at a critical juncture of life and death. The Pang clan did not want to end up like the Golden Crow clan. At this time, Demon God Venerable was watching coldly from the side. Fatty Pang was too slippery, and he couldn't stand this kind of guy. Surrender or be exterminated, so be it. Gu Fei's doppelganger no longer paid attention to Fatty Pang. He took a step forward and instantly disappeared into the void, returning to the governor's mansion. Fellow Daoist Gu, Fatty Pang hurriedly wanted to chase after him, but a figure blocked in front of him. Go back. Demon God Venerable looked coldly at Fatty Pang and said, Sigh. Fatty Pang sighed and his face became very depressed. It was all his fault. Why couldn't he see that Gu Fei was such a powerful person? There was no other way. The Pang clan had no choice but to surrender if they didn't want to be exterminated. Fatty Pang could only step onto the teleportation formation platform and directly activated it, disappearing from the platform. After seeing Fatty Pang leave, Demon God Venerable left the teleportation formation platform and returned to the governor's mansion. This time, Gu Fei's doppelganger only brought a few experts to the central continent. The rest of the experts were cultivating in the ancestral land of the chaotic Golden Rock clan in the East Continent. In the courtyard behind the governor's mansion in Dongtian City, Gu Fei's doppelganger sat cross-legged under the big tree in the courtyard. Master. Demon God Venerable came in front of Gu Fei's doppelganger. Do you think the Pang clan will surrender? Gu Fei's doppelganger glanced at Demon God Venerable and said, Probably not. Demon God Venerable said without hesitation. Probably not. Then there's no other way. Gu Fei's doppelganger shook his head, then closed his eyes and entered a state of cultivation. Doppelgangers could also advance. Gu Fei's doppelganger also needed to cultivate. Demon God Venerable bowed to Gu Fei and then retreated. It had nothing to do with him whether the Pang clan would be destroyed by Kang Q or not. Demon God Venerable's cultivation had reached such a level that he would not be moved even if his own clan was facing the crisis of extinction. At this time, outside the Pang clan's ancestral land, the battle between Kang Q and Pang Ming was still going on. Extremely powerful energy fluctuations constantly erupted from the two fast-moving figures. The entire void was constantly exploding as if doomsday was coming. This battle was related to the life and death of the entire Pang clan's disciples. Everyone was nervously staring at the two experts who were fighting. In the Pang clan's ancestral land, a group of high-level officials of the Pang clan was also watching the battle. All of them were sweating for Pang Ming. Even Pang Ji's forehead was sweating nervously. If his third brother was defeated, the Pang clan would be finished. The other party would definitely attack the Pang clan's ancestral land. The ancestral god realm was different from the past. The power of heavenly punishment absolutely suppressed the extreme power. No one dared to use the extreme power. The Pang clan would not be so passive if they could use the extreme power. Boom. At this moment, a loud noise was heard. Two figures were sent flying at the same time. Go to hell! Pang Ming roared and attacked. Beams of extremely sharp divine light turned into blades of light and slashed at Kang Q from all directions. Sword, rise. Chapter 3600. Outside the Pang clan's ancestral land, Kang Q and Pang Ming were fighting. At this time, all the forces in the entire central state were watching. Once Pang Ming was defeated, they would directly choose their side. The current situation was very unfavorable to the Pang clan. Those forces in the central state who were originally optimistic about the Pang clan were now wavering. Buzz. At this time, a sword chime like a dragon's roar sounded in the void. Then, an incomparably bright sword light rushed out of Kang Q's body. The sword light directly strangled the countless light blades that were slashing at him. The sword light that rushed out of Kang Q's body instantly collided with the light blades that were slashing at him. Suddenly, balls of divine light bloomed in the void. As long as the light blades were swept by Kang Q's sword light, they would instantly explode, and countless balls of light constantly bloomed in the void. All the light blades were smashed by the sword light that rushed out of Kang Q's body and turned into countless divine lights that dissipated in the void. After the sword light smashed the countless light blades, the sword light continued to strangle Pang Ming. At this time, 9 light blades suddenly rushed out of Pang Ming's body. In each light blade, there was a crescent-shaped sharp blade looming. This is, Kang Q's pupils involuntarily contracted when he saw the 9 light blades rushing out of Pang Ming's body. Was this the legendary Moon Deity's slash? The Moon Deity's slash was a kind of divine weapon of the ultimate path that only appeared in legends. The Moon Deity's slash was not a single divine weapon, but 9. Each of them was a crescent-shaped sharp blade. This was a set of divine weapons of the ultimate path. Of course, at this time, even the divine weapons of the ultimate path could not display the power of the ultimate path. Once the bottom line of heavenly punishment was crossed, the consequences would be extremely serious. Therefore, Pang Ming did not dare to display the power of the Moon Deity's slash at the ultimate path. Swoosh! The 9 divine blades directly spun and slashed forward. Clang! 3 divine blades directly collided with the sword light that was strangling Pang Q, making a sound of metal colliding and rubbing. The remaining 6 divine blades slashed towards Kang Q directly. The 6 divine blades flew across the void rapidly, leaving 6 pitch-black spatial cracks in the void. Heaven and earth shift. Kang Q roared angrily and immediately unleashed this move. He wanted to use his opponent's strength to deal a heavy blow to him. When the 6 divine blades slashed at Kang Q, they immediately met with resistance. The space around Kang Q was distorted and deformed. The 6 divine blades had all lost their aim and were spinning and slashing in all directions. The 2 divine blades even struck the divine light formed by the protective formation of the Pang clan's ancestral land. The layer of divine light immediately shook. The divine light of the Pang clan's defensive formation blocked the 2 divine blades. Clang! At this moment, Kang Q's sword light actually shook off the 3 divine blades, and then it rushed towards Pang Ming. The cold sword chi spread out, and the surrounding temperature kept dropping under the impact of the sword chi. Seeing this, Pang Ming was really shocked. Seeing the sword light coming towards him, he hurriedly soared into the sky, trying to avoid it. However, the sword light was too fast. Even if Pang Ming dodged in time, the sword light still swept his clothes, which immediately shattered into countless pieces. Pang Ming was taken aback. Kill! Pang Ming roared and directly pounced towards Kang Q from the sky. An extremely terrifying wave of power erupted from his body. The 9 moon deities' slashes flew back and slashed towards Kang Q. Haha, you're going all out? Kang Q said with a laugh. The sword light that rushed out from his body also flew back, and there was a terrifying wave of sword chi in the sword light. The sword light flew up and collided with Pang Ming's 9 moon deities' slashes. The sword light actually blocked Pang Ming's 9 moon deities' slashes, which made all the experts in the ancestral land of the Pang clan dumbfounded. This Kang Q, seeing this scene, Pang Ge was also extremely nervous. At this time, Fatty Pang came back and he directly summoned him over. When Fatty Pang told him what Jiu Fei said, he almost went crazy. How dare you ask my Pang clan to surrender? Pang Ge was furious. One should know that the Pang clan was one of the 3 superpowers in the central continent. They had also destroyed the Skyfire clan and were in the limelight. That Jiu Fei actually dared to ask them to surrender. Surrendering was an unacceptable humiliation for all the disciples of the Pang clan. However, Jiu Fei's meaning was obvious. If they didn't surrender, they would be exterminated. You want me to surrender? No way. Pang Ge roared at the sky, and the powerful coercion of a quasi-supreme erupted from his body. The surrounding experts of the Pang clan could not help but change their expressions. The powerful coercion that erupted from Pang Ge's body made them almost breathless. In the next moment, Pang Ge's figure disappeared into the void. Then, a sudden sound of wind and thunder came from the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Then, a mountain in the ancestral land of the Pang clan collapsed, and a figure rushed out from the collapsed mountain. This person was Pang Ge. Pang Ge held a black longbow with a dragon head in his hand and a quiver of arrows on his back. There were 3 black arrows in the quiver. What? Lord Primogenitor is going to use his trump card? The respected elders of the Pang clan were shocked when they saw this scene. The black bow in Pang Ge's hand emitted a shocking aura. The 3 black arrows in the quiver on his back also emitted a fierce aura that soared to the sky. The aura emitted from the bow and the 3 arrows was too shocking. It was definitely a supreme divine weapon. Pang Ge was planning to fight Kang Q to the death. However, at this moment, the East Continent Celestial Race Army that had taken down Zhongtian City left behind 20,000 soldiers to guard this ancient divine city. The remaining soldiers, under the leadership of the Sword Slaves and the Deity Race Lord, charged toward the Pang race's ancestral land. Soon, the Sword Slave arrived outside the ancestral land of the Pang clan. He was surprised when he saw the 2 supreme experts fighting. The Pang clan actually had such a supreme expert who could contend against Kang Q. At this moment, Pang Ge suddenly rushed out of the ancestral land of the Pang clan. As soon as he came out, he drew his bow and shot an arrow at Kang Q, who was fighting with Pang Ming. The black arrow turned into a black dragon and pounced at Kang Q at an extremely fast speed. "You want to gang up on me?" The sword slave was displeased when he saw this. Chapter 3601. Genius in a second, remember to go away. This is the internet that provides you with exciting novels to read. Outside the Pang clan's ancestral land, Kang Q and Pang Ming were fighting. At this moment, Pang Ge suddenly shot an arrow at Kang Q. A black arrow light flashed through the void. Kang Q was shocked and wanted to dodge, but the speed of the divine arrow was too fast. Kang Q only had time to dodge the vital parts of his body before he was shot in the left shoulder by the divine arrow. The huge impact of the divine arrow sent Kang Q flying backward, and the divine arrow directly penetrated his divine body. What? Kang Q was inexplicably shocked. One must know that he was an extreme supremacy in the ancestral god realm back then. Even though his cultivation level had fallen from the extreme supremacy realm, he still possessed a powerful extreme path divine body. There was no doubt that the extreme path divine body was powerful. Of course, after Kang Q fell from the extreme supremacy realm, the strength of the extreme path divine body also plummeted. Perhaps it was only 1/10 of its peak state, or even less. Even so, a quasi-supremacy Dao artifact definitely couldn't hurt him. Only an extreme path divine weapon could hurt him. In other words, the divine arrow that injured him wasn't an ordinary Dao artifact, but an extreme path Dao artifact. At this moment, Kang Q felt a cold aura spreading from the divine arrow in his left shoulder, and the blood in his body almost froze. What? Kang Q was shocked. The divine power emitted from the divine arrow was actually erasing the vitality in his body. He hurriedly circulated his mystic art and suppressed the divine power that was full of destructive aura spreading from the divine arrow. At this moment, Pang Ming had already charged over. 9 flying blades turned into shocking divine rainbows, and like 9 heavenly rivers falling from the sky, they slashed at Kang Q preposterous. Kang Q was shocked and furious. The 2 great ancestors of the Pang clan attacked him, and Pang Ge even sneaked up on him. They were truly despicable. He quickly retreated, but at the instant when the 9 flying blades were about to strike him, a sword light slashed out from the side and destroyed the 9 flying blades with a single strike. This, Kang Q was taken aback. He hurriedly looked towards the direction of the sword light and saw that it was a sword slave who had rushed over from Zhongtian City. At the same time, an army appeared in the distant sky. Astonishing battle intent surged over, causing all the living beings in the nearby regions to feel terrified. The Heavenly God Clan's army, which had conquered Zhongtian City, finally arrived. When the higher-ups of the Pang clan saw this, they were all inexplicably shocked. Zhongtian City had been destroyed so quickly. This was something they had never expected. At this moment, the sword servant blocked Pang Ming, allowing Kang Q to catch his breath. Swoosh! At the same time, Pang Ge shot another arrow at Kang Q. A black light tore through the void and instantly appeared in front of Kang Q. Clang. A sword light rushed out of Kang Q's body without any warning and blocked the arrow light. Although the power of the ultimate divine arrow did not break through the red line of the ancestral god realm, it was still extremely powerful. It actually shook off the sword light that rushed out of Kang Q's body. Of course, the power of the ultimate divine arrow had already been displayed to the extreme. It flew back into Pang Ji's hand. This time, Pang Ji used one of the Pang clan's trump cards. The black dragon-head bow in his hand was not an ordinary bow, but an ultimate divine weapon. The arrow was also an ultimate divine arrow. And Pang Ji only had 3 of these ultimate divine arrows. Roar! Kang Q suddenly roared and circulated his divine power with all his might. In the next moment, the divine arrow that was stuck in his left shoulder immediately flew out of his body. He stretched out his hand and instantly grabbed the divine arrow that had flown out of his body. However, boom! With a loud bang, the divine arrow in his hand actually exploded. The terrifying destructive power directly blew up his entire arm. The eruption of the destructive power also shook Kang Q away. Traces of blood seeped out of his body and his clothes hung on his body like rags. A huge black hole appeared in the sky. This was the power of the ultimate divine weapon. The surrounding void was directly torn apart and collapsed. Everything in the vicinity flew towards the black hole and was completely swallowed by it. Even Kang Q was enveloped by the heaven-devouring power within the black hole, and he flew towards the black hole. Rumble! At this moment, a terrifying power that changed the color of the heaven and earth suddenly descended from the sky. The heavenly punishment was activated. At this moment, all the experts above the sage level in the ancestral god realm felt the fluctuation of the heavenly punishment, and all of them felt their hearts palpitate. At this moment, the ultimate divine arrow that erupted from the ultimate divine arrow was directly obliterated by the vast and mighty heavenly punishment. The rapidly enlarging black hole actually disappeared in an instant, along with the ultimate divine arrow. Roar! Kang Q was infuriated. His entire body was radiating with divine light. The flesh, tendons, and bones of his exploded arm were rapidly regenerating, and the injuries on his body were also rapidly healing. The destructive power of the extreme Tao level from the self-destruction of the extreme Tao level had injured him quite badly. All the bones in his body had almost cracked, and his entire body had almost fallen apart. If it was an ordinary quasi-supreme martial artist, even a peak quasi-supreme martial artist would be destroyed by this explosion. This guy, even the sword slave, was shocked by this scene. This guy is really too ruthless. He actually wanted to destroy his ultimate divine weapon to kill Kang Q. Swoosh. Just as Kang Q was trying his best to heal his injured body, another arrow light shot over and directly hit Kang Q's body. T. Kang Q's shock was not something to be underestimated. At the next moment, boom! With a bang, the extreme Tao divine arrow also exploded. The power of the extreme Tao realm exploded, and another black hole appeared in the void. Kang Q's entire body exploded and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Then, a heaven-devouring force was generated from the black hole and swallowed the cloud of blood mist. Then, the heavenly punishment erupted and completely obliterated the ultimate divine weapon that had exploded. Pang Ji was very careful. After he shot out the extreme Tao God arrow, he had completely erased the connection between the extreme Tao God arrow and him. Therefore, even if the extreme Tao God arrow exploded and released an extreme power, it would not affect him in the slightest. Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Was Kang Q done for? He was shot to death just like that. What's going on? All the experts in Kang Q's camp were dumbfounded. They were all petrified, especially Peng Jingtian. His limbs were icy cold. The heavenly punishment descended from the sky. The black hole was obliterated and Kang Q's aura completely disappeared. Chapter 3602. Genius 1 second. Remember, love, go away. This is the internet that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Kang Q died just like that. Everyone was dumbfounded, especially those from the chaotic Golden Rock clan. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. Ha ha! At this time, Pang Ji burst into laughter. Kang-Q was actually killed by him. Now that the East Continent's God Race army had lost their leader, they naturally had nothing to rely on. Sure enough, the East Continent's experts who couldn't sense Kang-Q's aura started to panic. They didn't know what to do now that Kang-Q was dead. Kang-Q is dead. In the Pang clan's ancestral land, all the Pang clan's disciples were surprised and overjoyed. With Kang-Q's death, the Pang clan's crisis of extermination was half resolved. Without Kang-Q's leadership, the East Continent's God Race army was nothing to be afraid of. Kill. Kill our way out. Kill all these East Continent dogs. Angry roars came from the ancestral land of the Pang clan. All the Pang clan's disciples gathered spontaneously. Soon, the ancestral land was filled with people. Countless Pang clan's disciples were incomparably excited and full of fighting spirit. On the other hand, the morale of the East Continent's God Race army hit rock bottom with Kang-Q's death. Should we retreat or continue fighting? The patriarchs of the East Continent's three great experts conversed with their divine consciousnesses. The patriarch of the Celestial God clan and the patriarch of the Black Snake clan wanted to continue fighting because the ancestral land of the Pang clan was still enveloped by the 10-law killing formation. Even if Kang-Q was really dead, they still had the strength to fight and might not necessarily lose to the Pang clan. However, the Earth Spirit clan was obviously very cautious because they didn't take orders from Kang-Q. The four great progenitors of the Undead Spirit clan were Gu Fei's subordinates, not Kang-Q's subordinates. They only listened to Kang-Q's orders. Although the patriarchs of the Celestial God clan and the Black Snake clan wanted to continue fighting, they wanted to know what Gu Fei's arrangements were. The first progenitor of the Earth Spirit clan immediately sent out a message transmission talisman. In next to no time, the information transmission talisman appeared in the sky above East Sky City, and then it flew directly into a courtyard behind the city governor's estate before falling into the hands of a black-clothed young man under a large tree in the courtyard. Kang-Q is dead. The black-clothed youth sitting cross-legged on the boulder suddenly opened his eyes. Two rays of light immediately shot out from his eyes. I thought I wouldn't be able to use it, but it seems like an accident has occurred. Gu Fei's doppelganger said indifferently. The sudden fluctuation of extreme energy and the land of heavenly punishment. 4,000. He could clearly sense the fluctuations that were unleashed. The appearance of the extreme path's power made him feel somewhat uneasy, because using the extreme path's power at this moment was no different from seeking death. No one would be that stupid. Unless someone was forced into a desperate situation, they would use extreme power to perish together with the enemy. However, this was definitely not Kang-Q using his extreme path power, because Kang-Q had the upper hand in the battle against the Pang clan. Why would he risk using his extreme path power? There was only one possibility, and that was that the Pang clan had used extreme power. From the looks of it now, the Pang clan had used extreme power to kill Kang-Q. Kang-Q is just too unlucky. Gu Fei's doppelganger shook his head, then stood up from the boulder and took out a jade bottle. He opened the jade bottle, and a powerful qi and blood rushed out from the bottle. Half of the sky was dyed red. The powerful qi and blood spread out from the City Lord's mansion, then spread out from Eastern Sky City. It instantly enveloped the entire region where Eastern Sky City was located. All of the creatures near Eastern Sky City were terrified. This wave of blood energy was too powerful. Soon, the qi and blood retreated like a tide, disappearing from the City Lord's mansion. All the creatures in Eastern Sky City were inexplicably shocked, not knowing what had happened in the City Lord's mansion. At the same time, a figure suddenly rushed out from the City Lord's mansion and disappeared into the void. At this moment, outside the Pang clan's ancestral ground, the Divine Clan's army of the Earth Spirit clan began to move, directly assuming an offensive stance. Haha, even Kang-Q is dead. What are these guys doing? Why aren't they running? Do they want to die? In the Pang clan's ancestral ground, a member of the Pang clan's ancestral ground laughed wantonly. At this moment, the four great ancestors of the Earth Spirit clan spread out, each commanding a battle formation. Each battle formation had about 20,000 people. The four great battle formations had a total of 80,000 people, and the Earth Spirit clan had an army of 80,000 people. As the four great ancestors of the Earth Spirit clan presided over the battle formations, the four great battle formations began to operate. Terrifying energy waves immediately burst out from the four great battle formations. Oh my, they're serious. The descendants in the Pang clan's ancestral ground laughed. With Kang Q's death, they simply did not take the so-called Divine Clan's army of the East Continent seriously. What are they doing? Directly attacking the Pang clan's ancestral ground? The clan masters of the Heavenly God clan and the Black Snake clan were surprised by the Earth Spirit clan's army. They had the killing formation of 10 law, so why would they fight the enemy head-on? They just needed to trap these guys to death. The Sword Slave and Pang Ming had also stopped. The Sword Slave had retreated to the front of the Earth Spirit clan's army, while Pang Ming had been eyeing them covetously, wanting to attack. He sensed an extremely dangerous aura from the Sword Slave, who seemed to be even more difficult to deal with than Kang Q. Kill our way out. Kill our way out, countless descendants in the Pang clan's ancestral ground shouted. Haha, then let's kill our way out. Pang Ge waved his hand and directly opened the protective formation of the Pang clan's ancestral ground. In the next moment, countless descendants in the Pang clan's ancestral ground rushed out of the Pang clan's ancestral ground like a tide. They gathered with the hundreds of thousands of Pang clan's army outside and charged toward the East Continent's Divine Clan's army. For a moment, the sky was filled with battle cries. Ha ha! Kill all these East Continent dogs. Some descendants seemed to have gone crazy and were extremely excited. All of you can die now. At this moment, a furious roar was heard. An extremely terrifying destructive aura suddenly erupted, and an incomparably huge killing formation appeared between heaven and earth. In the next moment, countless destructive divine rays rushed out of the killing formation and pierced through the Pang clan's people who seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Fart! The Pang clan's descendant who was shouting to kill the East Continent dogs was directly swept by the destructive divine rays and instantly turned into a mist of blood. This guy didn't even know how he died, but it was very sad. Countless destructive divine rays fell, and the Pang clan's army was immediately covered in blood. Those who were swept by the destructive divine rays were all killed in body and soul. What? Pang Ge and Pang Ming's eyes turned red when they saw this. Chapter 3603. Kang Q seemed to have really died. The God Race army of the East Continent was at a loss for what to do. However, they soon regained their composure. The Earth Spirit clan even took the stance of attacking the Pang clan's ancestral land, while the Heavenly God clan and the mysterious Snake clan wanted to fight the Pang clan to the end. One must know that the East Continent's God Race army had an absolute advantage. Even if Kang Q had really died, the East Continent's God Race army was confident that they could defeat the Pang clan and become the overlord of the Central Continent, or even the entire ancestral God realm. However, to the disciples of the Pang clan, the East Continent's God Race army without Kang Q was simply a joke. What was the use? Hence, the countless disciples who were trapped in the Pang clan's ancestral land charged out as if they were injected with stimulants. However, they had forgotten that Kang Q had previously ordered countless formation masters to set up a super killing formation outside the ancestral land, the 10-law killing formation. Would no one be able to activate the 10-law killing formation once Kang Q was dead? Of course, that was absolutely impossible. At this moment, the 10-law killing formation was activated, and the entire heaven and earth was immediately shrouded by an extremely terrifying murderous aura. Beams of terrifying destructive divine light descended from the sky and blasted into the countless Pang clan members who were rushing out of the Pang clan's ancestral land. However, a bloody light suddenly appeared, and anyone who was swept by the destructive divine light was immediately turned into a bloody mist. Both their bodies and souls were destroyed. Just like that, a small half of the Pang clan's disciples were killed. This caused existences like Pang Ge and Pang Ming to be shocked and furious, and they hurriedly made a move with the intention of blocking the countless destructive divine lights that erupted from the 10-law slaughter formation. Pang Ge even shot an arrow at the formation eye of the 10-law killing formation. However, a loud bang was heard. The black arrow that Pang Ge shot exploded in the void and did not enter the formation eye of the 10-law killing formation. However, The powerful force of the extreme Tao level erupted and tore the 10-law killing formation apart. Figures exploded in the void and were destroyed in both body and soul. They were the formation masters who had activated the 10-law killing formation. Pang Ji shot out an arrow and the entire 10-law killing formation collapsed. Countless runes appeared in the void, densely packed together. The entire void was filled with runes. However, the next moment, the formation patterns dissipated in the void and disappeared. This, the patriarchs of the Celestial God clan and the Black Snake clan, as well as the 4 progenitors of the Earth Spirit clan, were indescribably shocked when they saw this scene. Pang Ji was indeed a formidable character of his generation. 4,000. In fact, Pang Ji had no other choice. If the 10-law killing formation continued to operate, more and more people from the Pang clan would die. At that moment, the power of heavenly punishment descended from the sky once again, completely obliterating the extreme power that had just erupted, and the 10-law killing formation was also completely broken. The 3 divine arrows in Pang Ji's hands were also finished. Blowing up a supreme Tao artifact to break the array was the most direct and effective method. However, losing a supreme Tao artifact was not something that the average cultivator would be willing to do. East Continent dogs, your time has come. The disciples of the Pang clan rushed out of the ancestral land of the Pang clan and madly attacked the army of the East Continent. Their battle cries were earth-shattering. Kill. The 4 progenitors of the Earth Spirit clan urged their battle formations forward. The 4 battle formations of the Earth Spirit were like 4 sharp blades that stabbed into the countless disciples of the Pang clan. The 4 battle formations blocked the disciples of the Pang clan who had rushed out of the ancestral land of the Pang clan. At that moment, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Pang clan, led by the patriarch of the Pang clan, Pang Outsung, fought against the Black Snake clan and the Celestial God clan. Countless God-rank soldiers fell from the sky like dumplings. Most of the God-rank soldiers that fell to the ground were already finished. There were also some heavily injured soldiers who fell from the sky, writhing in pain. However, no one paid attention to them at this moment. The battle broke out. The sky above the ancestral land of the Pang clan was filled with people. Blood rained down from the sky, making one's heart palpitate. For a moment, the God-rank soldiers of the East Continent and the Pang clan were locked in a stalemate. Kill. At that moment, Pang Ji directly attacked the sword slave. At the same time, Pang Ming also attacked. However, a figure came from the side and intercepted Pang Ming. Your opponent is me. Nai Jingyun, who was carrying a large saber on his back, attacked. He had been watching coldly from the sidelines, but at this moment, he had no choice but to attack. Saber Master Nai Jingyun's cultivation and combat strength were definitely higher than Pang Ming's. Pang Ming stared at Nai Jingyun, and a terrifying murderous aura spread out. The void around him was constantly shaking, and black spatial cracks appeared and disappeared continuously. Rumble, 2 powerful auras constantly collided. The 2 great experts had not yet fought, but the void between them was constantly collapsing. The large saber on Saber Master Nai Jingyun's back was constantly shaking, as if it could be unsheathed at any time. A cold saber chi spread out from the large saber. Kill. Pang Ming roared, and 9 divine blades rushed out from his body. They turned into a shocking divine rainbow and slashed towards Saber Master Nai Jingyun. Kill. Saber Master Nai Jingyun also roared. The next moment, the big saber on his back clanged and flew directly from his back. It turned into a shocking saber radiance and strangled the divine blade that was chopping down. The saber radiance on Nai Jingyun's divine saber spread out and blocked all 9 of Pang Ming's divine blades. What? Pang Ming could not help but be moved. Saber Master Nai Jingyun was indeed worthy of his reputation. These peak existences in the East Continent were also quite capable. Nai Jingyun had 2 sabers. One was the big saber he carried on his back. This big saber was a divine artifact, and the other saber was his body. The next moment, he directly turned into a dazzling saber radiance. This saber radiance instantly slashed in front of Pang Ming, and the cold saber chi rushed towards Pang Ming. This shocked Pang Ming once again. He directly disappeared into the void. Nai Jingyun's saber couldn't hit him, so his figure appeared in the void, no longer maintaining the state of his body, turning into saber radiance. At this moment, the 9 divine blades and the divine saber that were entangled together separated. Pang Ming and Nai Jingyun once again charged at each other. The two super experts began to fight, and terrifying divine power fluctuations spread in all directions, causing countless cultivators to be inexplicably shocked. At this moment, the sword slave and Pang Ji were fighting. As soon as the 9 heaven punishment swords were unleashed, Pang Ji was immediately forced to constantly retreat. Swoosh! A sword light rushed past Pang Ji's side, leaving a saber mark on Pang Ji's clothes. Pang Ji continuously smashed the black bow in his hand at the sword slave. The supreme divine arrows were used up, and the black bow in Pang Ji's hand became a decoration. One must know that in the current ancestral god realm, there was absolutely no one who could refine supreme divine arrows. The sword slave's sword principle cultivation was very high. Soon, a bloody mark appeared on Pang Ji's left shoulder. Not only did the sword chi cut his clothes, but it also left a mark on his body. Seeing this scene, Pang Ming could not help but feel anxious. Just when the battle had reached a stalemate, a figure suddenly descended from the sky and landed on the side of the East Continent war soldiers. What? How is this possible? When everyone saw the figure, they were all dumbfounded and in disbelief. Lord Ancestor, when Peng Jingtian saw that person, he was extremely excited because this person was their Lord Ancestor, Kang Q. On the other hand, the Pang clan was dumbfounded. What was going on? How could a dead person be resurrected? One must know that Kang Q's death was the most thorough. The scene of Kang Q's body and soul being destroyed and his Tao disappearing was still in everyone's mind. Kang Q was definitely dead, but how could he appear in front of everyone? What's going on? Seeing Kang Q once again appear in front of everyone, all the disciples of the Pang clan were dumbfounded. While they were distracted, many disciples of the Pang clan were killed by the East Continent's war soldiers. At this time, the morale of the East Continent's war soldiers soared, while the Pang clan's morale fell to rock bottom. Countless disciples of the Pang clan could not sit still anymore. Some even turned around and rushed into the ancestral land. Kang Q is still alive. Although everyone was in disbelief, Kang Q had appeared in front of them. Facts speak louder than words. At the same time, another incomparably powerful figure descended from the sky and killed his way into the ancestral land of the Pang clan, destroying everything in his way. Who's that? Pang Ming was inexplicably shocked. He did not know this fellow at all, but it did not mean that he did not know who this fellow was. This was the Hall Master. Kang Q's sudden appearance dealt a heavy blow to the Pang clan's morale. Kill! Kang Q roared angrily as he led the celestial army into the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Countless disciples of the Pang clan were defeated and killed by the celestial army of the East Continent. Seeing this scene, Pang Ji and Pang Ming were about to go crazy. They wanted to save the countless war soldiers and disciples of the Pang clan, but they could not find the time to do so. This was because they all had opponents, and their opponents were extremely powerful. Once they were distracted, their opponents would take advantage of them, and they would be defeated by their opponents. At the cultivation level of Pang Ji and the others, once they were defeated, it meant that they would die. They wanted to close the defensive formation, but at this time, the Pang clan's ancestral land was filled with people, causing the defensive formation of the Pang clan to be unable to be closed. If they were to forcibly close the defensive formation, it was unknown how many people of the Pang clan would die. At this time, every soldier of the celestial army of the East Continent was numb. They had killed until their hands were weak. Of course, the celestial army of the East Continent had also suffered losses. However, compared to the losses of the Pang clan, the losses of the celestial army of the East Continent were basically negligible. Chapter 3604. The Pang clan was utterly defeated. At this moment, countless disciples of the Pang clan were about to rush into the ancestral land of the Pang clan. The God Race army of the East Continent took advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to chase after the disciples of the Pang clan. They followed the defeated disciples into the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Damn it, all of you deserve to die. Pang Ji's eyes turned bloodshot when he saw countless disciples of the Pang clan being slaughtered by the god race army of the East Continent. He was about to undo the seal and release his extreme strength to perish together with the sword slaves. "No, don't do anything stupid," Pang Ming hurriedly shouted at Pang Ji. Due to his distraction, his left arm was struck by Nai Jingyun's saber, and his entire arm was sent flying. Roar! Pang Ming roared as 9 divine blades rushed out of his body and slashed at Nai Jingyun in a frenzy. Hum! The saber in Nai Jingyun's hand let out a buzzing sound. Then, a mass of saber light instantly spread from the saber and shrouded him. Clang! The 9 divine blades slashed directly at the protective layer of saber light around Nai Jingyun's body and were all sent flying. Pang Ming was shocked and furious. At this moment, his severed left arm regrew. In just an instant, a new arm had grown out. He directly rushed into the sky and pounced on the god race army of the East Continent. The 9 divine blades circled around him, emitting a terrifying aura. This guy. At this moment, Nai Jingyun's face turned gloomy. Pang Ming had deliberately taken a blow from him. It seemed like he wanted to fight with his life on the line, but his real purpose was to escape. Swoosh! Nai Jingtian became one with his saber and chased after Pang Ming. "All of you, go to hell." Pang Ming directly killed his way into the god race army of the East Continent. In the next moment, a mass of divine light erupted, and countless soldiers in a battle formation were sent flying in all directions. The 9 divine blades immediately transformed into countless divine blades that slashed out in all directions. The divine weapons that were struck by the divine blades immediately turned into clouds of blood mist. Damn it! A furious roar rang out, and a powerful figure directly attacked Pang Ming. Powerful fluctuations of divine Dao power erupted, and an extremely sharp divine light pierced through the void, instantly arriving in front of Pang Ming. Pang Ming spat out a beam of divine light to meet the incoming divine light. There was a flying sword wrapped in the divine light. 2 beams of divine light collided with each other. Those were 2 flying swords. This was a confrontation between 2 flying swords. Incomparably sharp sword chi rippled out, tearing apart the void of heaven and earth. "Your opponent is me." At this moment, Nai Jingyun also charged over. A violent aura erupted from his body, causing the entire void to tremble. His domineering aura was overflowing. Nai Jingyun walked the path of the tyrannical blade. With a blade in hand, he could dominate the world. He descended from the sky and slashed down on Pang Ming's head with his large saber. A violent saber light rushed out from his large saber, as if it could split the entire world into 2. "Nai Jingyun, what are you doing? Didn't you see that he killed my men? He's mine." That person shouted at Nai Jingyun while controlling the flying sword to fight fiercely with Pang Ming. Pang Ming had destroyed his battle formation as soon as he arrived, and this made his eyes red. "He's yours. He belongs to the person who killed him," Nai Jingyun said disapprovingly. He continued to attack, and he had no intention of stopping. "You, the 3rd ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan, was shocked and angry. He couldn't stop. After all, this guy had killed so many of his men. How could he swallow his anger if he didn't kill this guy? Neither of them had any intention of stopping. In this way, Pang Ming was in for a tragedy. 2 super experts joined forces, and Pang Ming was immediately blasted away. He could dodge Nai Jingyun's saber, but he couldn't dodge the 3rd ancestor's fist. The 3rd ancestor sent Pang Ming flying tens of thousands of feet away with a single punch. The flying sword directly strangled Pang Ming, and wherever the sword light passed, the void was annihilated silently. Swoosh! At this moment, a ball of divine light suddenly emerged from Pang Ming's body. In the next moment, his figure disappeared in the void. He was nowhere to be seen. Soon, Pang Ming's figure appeared in the ancestral land of the Pang clan. He escaped. The 3rd ancestor and Nai Jingyun were shocked. They didn't expect this guy to escape. After all, primogenitor existences like him also had their own dignity, and they wouldn't do such a disgraceful thing. However, those who achieved great things didn't bother with trifles. Some primogenitor existences would also do anything to achieve their goals. At this moment, Pang Ji, who was fighting with the sword slave, also wanted to escape. Unfortunately, the sword slave wasn't like Nai Jingyun or the third ancestor. Pang Ji couldn't get rid of the sword slave no matter how hard he tried. Kill your way in and destroy the Pang clan, the third ancestor roared angrily as he gathered his subordinates that had been defeated by Pang Ming. Soon, thousands of people gathered together, and under the leadership of the third ancestor, they killed their way into the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Nai Jingyun also killed his way into the ancestral land of the Pang clan. However, when Nai Jingyun killed his way into the ancestral land of the Pang clan, the defensive array of the ancestral land of the Pang clan was activated. A ball of divine light suddenly emerged and enveloped the entire ancestral land. Some unlucky fellows were directly sliced in half by the sudden appearance of the light screen. Half of their bodies were outside the ancestral land, while the other half were inside. What? The clan masters of the Celestial God clan and the mysterious Snake clan were shocked. They had just attacked the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Didn't this mean that they were trapped in the ancestral land of the Pang clan? Outsiders couldn't enter the ancestral land of the Pang clan freely. However, to the higher-ups of the Pang clan, they could still enter the ancestral land even if the defensive array of the ancestral land was activated and the void was sealed. Damn it! The first ancestor and the fourth ancestor also killed their way into the ancestral land of the Pang clan. They were also trapped in the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Kang Q, the second ancestor, and the others were blocked outside the ancestral land of the Pang clan by the defensive array. However, more than half of the Pang clan's army was blocked outside the ancestral land of the Pang clan. There were also many disciples of the Pang clan who couldn't enter the ancestral land. Kill them all. Kang Q ordered. Kill. The East Continent Celestial Army attacked the soldiers and disciples of the Pang clan who were blocked outside the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Rays of divine light shot out from the first ancestor's battle formation and nailed the disciples of the Pang clan to death in the void. Those were the divine light formed by the battle spears. After nailing the disciples of the Pang clan, the divine spears were retracted. The battle formation of the second ancestor also attacked. In an instant, countless battle spears turned into countless divine lights and fell towards the disciples and soldiers of the Pang clan. Screams of despair resounded continuously. More than half of the disciples and soldiers of the Pang clan who were blocking the ancestral land of the Pang clan fell. It was a one-sided massacre. Kang Q and the others didn't show any mercy because they knew that being merciful to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. Since they had become the enemy, they had to defeat them. Pang Ge was also fighting with the sword slave outside the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted as the sword slave displayed his powerful combat strength. The power of the 9 heaven punishing swords in his hands was much stronger than when it was in the hands of Ji Yu Fei. The sword slave was a sword maniac who entered the Tao through killing. His murderous aura was earth-shattering, causing the heaven and earth to pale in comparison. Even Pang Ge, the first ancestor of the Pang clan, was shocked by the murderous aura that erupted from the sword slave. He had lived for countless years, but it was the first time he encountered someone with such a strong murderous nature. The divine power of the Pang clan was also amazing. Pang Ge's cultivation was not weaker than the sword slave's, but his murderous nature was much weaker. Yin and Yang Qi rushed out of his body and turned into a yin-yang divine diagram. In the void where he was, the heaven and earth seemed to be reversed. Even the sword slave's sword light was shifted away. It seems to have the same effect as Master's divine power. Demon God Venerable had been watching coldly from the side. He had no intention of making a move. At this moment, his eyes lit up when he saw the divine power that Pang Ge displayed. The divine power derived from the yin and yang energy was amazing and could compete with the sword slave. One should know that the sword slave used to be an extreme sword venerable and created the extreme divine power. Only an extreme Dao divine art could contend against an extreme Dao divine art. Pang Ge was the first ancestor of the Pang clan. His yin and yang energy was also an extreme divine power. He was once an extreme god ancestor and had the ability to compete with the sword slave. The two experts directly charged into the starry sky. Countless stars exploded continuously, illuminating the starry sky. The sword slave slashed out with his sword. The swordlight soared for thousands of miles. Wherever the swordlight passed, the stars were directly destroyed. The aura of destruction filled every inch of the starry sky. Pang Ge directly dodged and did not dare to fight the sword slave head-on. The sword slave walked the Tao of killing. He would kill gods and demons. As long as there was an existence that stood in his way, no matter what it was, he would kill it with one sword without hesitation. It was a tragedy for Pang Ge to encounter an opponent like the sword slave. Pang Ge moved quickly in the starry sky, dodging the sword slave's destructive sword light. Then, he drew his bow and shot at the sword slave. Although the power of the divine arrows condensed by the yin and yang divine power was not comparable to the power of the extreme divine arrows, it was still easy to kill a quasi-supremacy. The yin and yang divine arrows were constantly shot at the sword slave. Wherever the swordlight passed, the void seemed to collapse and the divine power emitted was incomparably terrifying. However, the sword slave destroyed the yin-yang divine arrow with a single slash of its sword before charging at Pang Ge. Pang Ge had the yin and yang shift divine power to protect himself and the yin and yang divine arrows shot by the extreme divine bow. He had both offense and defense. Even if the sword slave wanted to kill Pang Ge, it would not be easy. Just as the sword slave and Pang Ge were fighting, in the ancestral land of the Pang clan, a group of soldiers that seemed to have rushed out from hell. This divine army was extremely powerful. As soon as it came into contact with the Black Snake clan's battle formation, countless Black Snake clan soldiers fell from the sky. In an instant, nearly 10,000 Black Snake clan soldiers were killed. Chapter 3605. At this moment, the Pang clan used their trump card again. A troop of soldiers rushed out from the depths of the Pang clan's ancestral land. An extremely terrifying murderous aura burst out from the troop's battle formation. Everyone who sensed the murderous aura felt their hearts palpitate. The combat strength displayed by this troop was extremely powerful. As soon as they came into contact with the Black Snake clan's battle formation, nearly 10,000 soldiers of the Black Snake clan were killed by the spears of the Pang clan. This scene was absolutely horrifying. The warriors of the Black Snake clan fell from the sky like dumplings. They were all killed by the spear with one stab. There was no need for a second stab. The troop of the Pang clan was like an army of the god of death that rushed out from hell. Wherever they passed, the Black Snake clan's divine army was directly defeated. Kill. Kill them all. The clan master of the Black Snake clan went crazy. They were trapped in the Pang clan's ancestral land. The Pang clan and they would not rest until one of them died. At this moment, the Black Snake clan had no way out. Not only the Black Snake clan, the Divine God clan, the first ancestor of the Earth Spirits, but also the third and fourth ancestors of the Earth Spirits had no way out. Even a part of the divine army of the chaotic Golden Rock clan was trapped in the ancestral land of the Pang clan. Besides the God Ancestor army of the East Continent, Saber Master Nai Jingyun of the East Continent was also trapped. He had chased Pang Ming into the ancestral land of the Pang clan. At this moment, the clan master of the Divine God clan saw the Black Snake clan soldiers being slaughtered so miserably. So what if I have to die? I'll fight. The clan master of the Divine God clan immediately gave the order to attack the troop of the Pang clan with only 10,000 soldiers. Humph. Digging your own grave. At this moment, a sneer came from the battle formation of the Pang clan's troop. This person was Pang Ming. He had escaped into the Earth Ancestor vein in the depths of the ancestral land of the Pang clan and awakened the ancient soldier that had been sleeping in the Earth Ancestor vein for countless years. The ancient weapon was one of the Pang clan's trump cards. When the Pang clan had fought against the Golden Rock goddess for Dongtian City, they had used the ancient weapon. The vanguard army of the East Continent led by the goddess Golden Rock was defeated by the ancient warriors. Dongtian City was almost taken back by the Pang race. However, at the crucial moment, the sword slave had intervened and defeated the ancient warrior of the Pang clan. But at this moment, the sword slave and Pang Ge charged into the starry sky. 4,000. He didn't have the time to deal with the ancient soldier of the Pang clan that came out from the depths of the Pang clan's ancestral land. The warriors of the deity clan formed a battle formation and attacked the ancient warriors of the Pang clan. Attack! The clan leader of the Heavenly God clan bellowed in rage as he swung the spear in his hand. At the same time, the countless divine rank soldiers in the Heavenly God clan's battle formation also swung their spears at the same time. Countless battle spears soared into the sky, turning into divine light that rained down on the ancient warrior formation of the Pang clan. Defend! At this time, Pang Ming roared. In the next moment, the ancient warriors of the Pang clan immediately took out their shields and raised them up. Countless shields formed a shield wall that protected all the ancient warriors. In the next moment, concentrated clanging sounds resounded. The spears that flew out from the deity clan's battle formation landed on the shield wall of the ancient warriors of the Pang clan. All the spears were blocked by the shield wall. Not a single one of the ancient warriors of the Pang clan was injured. Attack! Pang Ming, who was personally overseeing the ancient battle formation, continued to issue orders. Swoosh! The shield wall disappeared. Half of the ancient warriors of the Pang tribe struck out with their spears, while the other half continued to attack the Black Snake tribe. 6,000 divine lights flew out from the Pang clan's ancient battle formation and landed on the deity clan's battle formation. Defend! The clan leader of the deity clan hurriedly ordered the defense. Swoosh! Every soldier in the Heavenly God clan's battle formation took out a shield at the same time and raised it up. The shields were combined together, and there wasn't even a single gap between them. However, when the 6,000 spears turned into divine lights and landed, miserable screams came from the battle formation of the deity clan. The spear that descended from the sky actually pierced through the shield that the celestial God clan warrior had raised, directly piercing through the warrior's trump card. What? The clan leader of the deity clan slapped away the spears that were stabbing towards him. However, in the next moment, he was met with tragedy. Thousands of warriors were stabbed to death. The spears that flew out from the ancient battle formation of the Pang clan actually ignored the shields in the hands of the deity clan's warriors. This caused everyone to be dumbfounded. What's going on? The elders of the deity clan were dumbfounded. Did the spears of the Pang clan actually possess an incomparably powerful divine weapon? The elders of the deity clan guessed correctly. The ancient warriors of the Pang clan had been sleeping in the ancestral veins of the earth for countless years. Their divine bodies and weapons had been nourished by the ancestral chi of the earth and had become incomparably powerful. The weapons in the hands of the ancient warriors of the Pang clan were naturally much stronger than ordinary warriors. It was no surprise that they could break through the shields of the deity clan's warriors. Rumble! At this moment, the ancient warriors of the Pang clan were retreating. Wherever they passed, the warriors of the mysterious Snake clan were constantly killed. Outrageous! Do you think you're invincible just like that? At this moment, an angry roar came from afar. The first progenitor of the Earth Spirit clan led the warriors under him and rushed over. They were also trapped in the ancestral land of the Pang clan. The first progenitor of the Earth Spirit clan sat directly in the battle formation. At that moment, the battle formation was operating and a powerful force was gathering. After that, a huge dragon rushed out from the battle formation and pounced on the Pang clan's ancient battle formation. Defend! Pang Ming's face was extremely solemn as he faced the attack from the battle formation led by the first progenitor of the Earth Spirit clan. One must know that the first progenitor of the Earth Spirit clan was not an ordinary opponent. The first progenitor of the Earth Spirit clan was too powerful as he used to be a supreme ultimate god of the Earth Spirit clan. Although he was no longer a supreme ultimate god, no one dared to underestimate him. Nearly 10,000 ancient warriors once again raised their shields. Boom! 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 A series of loud noises were heard as the huge dragon that rushed out from the first progenitor's battle formation directly hit the shields of the ancient warriors of the Pang clan. A violent force erupted, causing the entire ancient battle formation to tremble. Pang Ming sat cross-legged in the eye of the ancient battle formation and could not help but look extremely solemn when he sensed the attack from the first progenitor of the Earth Spirit clan could shake the entire ancient battle formation. At that moment, the clan leader of the Black Snake clan hurriedly led the remaining Black Snake soldiers to retreat. They had no choice but to retreat. If they were attacked by the Pang clan's ancient warriors a few more times, all of the Black Snake Clan soldiers would be annihilated in the Pang Clan's ancestral land. At that moment, the shields above the heads of the Pang Clan's ancient warriors were connected as ancient divine patterns appeared on the shields. Those divine patterns intertwined and formed a layer of divine light that blocked all the attacks from the first progenitor of the Earth Spirit Clan's battle formation. The huge dragons collided with the layer of divine light on the ancient battle formation, and all of them exploded. Just as the first progenitor of the Earth Spirit Clan's battle formation launched an attack on the Pang Clan's ancient battle formation, the Heavenly God Clan's battle formation was also desperately gathering its strength. A ball of divine light rushed out from the eye of the Heavenly God Clan's formation and floated above the battle formation. Countless rays of divine light rushed out from every soldier of the Heavenly God Clan and entered the ball of light above the battle formation. Rumble. The divine power emitted from the ball of light grew stronger and the void around it was constantly being annihilated. It was incomparably terrifying. However, the ancestral God realm could not have extreme power. The power gathered by the ball of light didn't cross the red line allowed by the ancestral God realm. The Heavenly God Clan's battle formation was about to use its trump card. It wanted to gather the power of the entire battle formation and deal a fatal blow to the Pang Clan's ancient battle formation. The Heavenly God Clan's clan leader wasn't the only one with this idea. The fourth progenitor of the Earth Spirit Clan was also gathering power and preparing to attack. For a moment, the divine power fluctuations from the Pang Clan's ancestral land were extremely powerful. This caused the other cultivators in the ancestral land to be extremely terrified. The power of the chaotic Golden Rock Clan's battle formation was the weakest in the Pang Clan's ancestral land. However, it was a moment of life and death. If they couldn't destroy the Pang Clan's ancient battle formation, they would be the ones to die. No one wanted to die. The current situation was the most critical for the East Continent soldiers. If they could take down the Pang Clan in one go, they would be able to dominate the entire central continent. Becoming the overlord of the central continent was extremely significant. It was enough to affect the entire ancestral God realm's forces. Many forces would have to be reshuffled. At this time, the scene outside the Pang Clan's ancestral land was completely different. The clansmen of the Pang Clan who were blocked outside had almost all been killed by the God Clan army led by Kang Q. Kang Q didn't seem to be in a good state. He couldn't exert much of his cultivation. In fact, he had been shot dead by Pang Ge. However, he had a backup plan. With the help of Jiu Fei's doppelganger, he came back to life. This Kang Q was the real Kang Q. He wasn't an incarnation or a doppelganger. Fellow Daoist, please help. At that moment, Kang Q came in front of the monster god and said politely. He had actually sensed the monster god's existence a long time ago. The monster god was an expert under Jiu Fei and his cultivation base was definitely much stronger than his. You want me to help you break the great formation in front? Chapter 3606. At this time, in the ancestral land of the Pang Clan, battle cries shook the heavens. The sky was filled with figures fighting fiercely. Blood rain fell from the sky. Moreover, this was not an ordinary blood rain, but the blood rain of gods. The East Continent Celestial Army led by Kang Q was engaged in the final battle with the Pang Clan's army. The battle was terrifying as the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The sun and moon lost their light. Even the starry sky was affected as countless stars completely disappeared from the starry sky. Rumble, the defensive formation of the Pang Clan's ancestral land was operating crazily, blocking nearly half of Kang Q's celestial army outside. The second ancestor guided the power of the battle formation to attack the defensive formation of the Pang Clan's ancestral land. However, the defensive formation of the Pang Clan's ancestral land was constantly increasing. Even the essence of the ancestral Earth meridian was being guided over. Moreover, the defensive formation of the Pang Clan could devour all attacks and convert them into the defensive formation's power. Therefore, the more one attacked the formation, the stronger the defensive formation would be. The entire Pang Clan's ancestral land was shrouded in a layer of divine light. Countless divine runes were faintly visible and intertwined on the divine light, forming a mysterious formation that kept gathering power. Boom! A loud bang was heard from the battle formation controlled by the second ancestor. Subsequently, a ball of destructive divine light rushed out from the battle formation and bombarded the Pang clan's ancestral land. It was as terrifying as a sun falling towards the Pang clan's ancestral land. However, the ball of destructive divine light exploded on the layer of divine light that shrouded the Pang clan's ancestral land. The explosive power was completely devoured by the layer of divine light. That layer of godly light didn't even create a ripple. This shocked the second ancestor. It seemed like he had to think of another way to break through the protective divine light of the Pang clan's ancestral land unless he used an extreme divine weapon. However, the extreme divine weapon of the Earth Spirit clan was not in the second ancestor's hands. "Friend, you have to help me this time no matter what." Seeing this scene, Kang Q also became anxious. All right. The demon god did not waste any time and immediately agreed. The reason he appeared here was to help Kang Q at the critical moment. Haha, all right. Thank you, fellow Daoist. Kang Q laughed and said, but he also knew that he owed the demon god a huge favor. How about it? 4,000. As for how to return it, that was a matter for the future. Kang Q wanted to use his extreme Dao divine sword. This was a Dao artifact that he had refined himself. He had refined it his entire life. Although his cultivation had fallen from the extreme Dao realm, his sword was still an extreme Dao divine sword. However, it was impossible for him to self-destruct his divine weapon like Pang Ji did. Therefore, he had to join forces with the demon god to destroy the Pang clan's defensive formation. That was because the demon god also had a divine weapon in his hand. It was a sword that Jiu Fei's doppelganger had temporarily given to him. It was the purple-gold divine sword that Jiu Fei's doppelganger had brought along. Kang Q and the demon god Venerable activated their respective divine weapons without hesitation. Buzz! 2 sword chimes were heard as 2 immortal sword lights soared into the sky from Kang Q and the demon god. 2 waves of chilling sword aura spread out, causing the temperature of the entire void to drop rapidly. Everyone felt a chill down their spine as the aura of the 2 divine swords made their souls tremble. The 2 experts directly activated their divine swords and slashed at the Pang clan's ancestral land's guardian divine light. 2 sword lights flashed and directly penetrated the layer of divine light. That was the power of the divine swords. Even if they could not display their true power, they could still break through the Pang clan's ancestral land's guardian divine light. However, the guardian divine light that was broken by the 2 immortal swordlights was quickly repairing itself. What? Kang Q and the demon god Venerable could not help but be shocked. The 2 holes on the guardian divine light were repairing very quickly and were about to disappear. Preposterous. Kang Q and the demon god Venerable looked at each other before they turned into a divine light and rushed into the Pang clan's ancestral land before the 2 holes on the guardian divine light completely disappeared. Meanwhile, in the Pang clan's ancestral land, Pang Ge commanded the ancient battle formation and defeated the East Continent's divine race army. Whether it was the Deity clan, the Black Snake clan, or the Earth Spirit clan, they were no match for Pang Ge. To be precise, they were no match for Pang Ge and the ancient soldier. The Pang clan's ancient soldier battle formation could be said to be invincible. Even the first Earth Spirit ancestors' battle formation was forced to retreat. Many Earth Spirit clan's soldiers were killed. The 4th Earth Spirit ancestors' battle formation was destroyed by Pang Ge's ancient soldier battle formation. 80% of the soldiers in the battle formation died under the spears of the ancient soldier. Just as Kang Q and the demon god Venerable charged into the Pang clan's ancestral land, the 3rd Earth Spirit ancestor had just been blasted away by Pang Ge's battle formation. His body was pierced by the ancient soldier, leaving a dozen bloody holes on his body. The 3rd Earth Spirit ancestor was severely injured. Preposterous. Kang Q rushed into the Pang clan's ancestral land and saw this scene. He could not help but be furious. He directly activated the ultimate divine sword and slashed at Pang Ge's ancient soldier battle formation. A sword light fell directly on Pang Ge's battle formation like a divine rainbow. The immortal sword light directly tore the void between heaven and earth. Defend. Pang Ge hurriedly ordered. Tens of thousands of ancient soldiers immediately raised the shields in their hands. A layer of divine light instantly emerged from the shield formation, and a huge formation pattern emerged on the shield formation. When Kang Q's sword light fell on the ancient soldier battle formation, it was blocked by the shield formation. The immortal sword light was directly knocked away. This scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. It should be known that that was a godly sword of the ultimate path. This guy, Nai Jingyun, could not help but sweat on his forehead when he saw this scene from afar. He came here to kill Pang Ge, but he found that he could not kill Pang Ge anymore. Pang Ge was sitting in the ancient soldier battle formation, so Nai Jingyun naturally did not dare to go up and fight against the ancient soldier battle formation. Although he was the saber master, he was not strong enough to ignore all enemies. He would definitely lose against the ancient soldier battle formation. The third Earth Spirit Ancestor was the best example. The third Earth Spirit Ancestor's cultivation was not inferior to Saber Master Nai Jingyun. Kill. The demon god Venerable moved. The purple gold divine sword immediately turned into an immortal sword light and slashed at Pang Ge's ancient soldier battle formation. However, there was no suspense. The purple gold divine sword could not exert the power of the ultimate divine sword and was also blasted away by the power of the ancient soldier battle formation. How is this possible? Although it was hard to believe, the combat power displayed by the ancient soldier battle formation was really amazing. Do I have to ask Master for help? Chapter 3607. While the central continent of the ancestral god realm was undergoing drastic changes, the east continent of the ancestral god realm was peaceful and all living beings were recuperating. The east continent had gone through a terrible war. The Chaos Golden Rock race had finally unified the east continent and ended the situation where the major forces of the east continent were divided. The east continent was actually an undefended region at this time, but the forces of the other regions of the ancestral god realm didn't dare to set foot in it. Even though Kang Q had taken away almost all of the divine army in the east continent, the forces of the other regions didn't dare to take advantage of the situation. The reason was simple. Jiyu Fei was in the east continent. Jiyu Fei had never suffered a single defeat in the ancestral god realm. With unstoppable momentum, he had helped the Chaos Golden Rock race defeat the Golden Crow race and subdued the Earth Spirit, the Heavenly God realm, and the Profound Snake race, the three great races of the eastern continent. The Chaos Golden Rock race had swept through the entire east continent and no force could contend against them. Kang Q was currently on an expedition to the central continent. Only a small number of the Chaos Golden Rock race's clansmen were guarding the ancestral land. In the depths of the Chaos Golden Rock race's ancestral land, there was a valley filled with blooming flowers and lingering mist. A small bridge and a stream could be vaguely seen in the mist. Occasionally, immortal beasts would walk to the stream to drink from it and immortal birds would fly across the sky. This was simply a paradise. The spiritual energy here was dense and it was definitely a treasure land for cultivators to cultivate in. Cultivating in such a paradise would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. A figure was sitting on a boulder in the depths of the valley. This person was Jiyu Fei's real body. There was a black dragon sitting on his shoulder. It was a divine dragon that he had once subdued. He had tossed it into his inner world and let it run its own course. This divine dragon was impressive. It had actually cultivated successfully in Jiyu Fei's inner world and caught Jiyu Fei's attention. He then let the black dragon carry out its duties. The black dragon was originally Jiyu Fei's mount. It was just that he hadn't paid attention to it for a long time. Now, the black dragon's cultivation had actually reached the saint realm. It was a saint dragon with incomparably powerful battle prowess. It was not something that ordinary saints could compare to. In Jiyu Fei's hand was an even smaller dragon. This dragon actually looked like the ancestral dragon. A faint medicinal effect emanated from it. It turned out that this little ancestral dragon was not a real dragon, but an immortal medicine. This immortal medicine was the ancestral dragon's immortal medicine that Jiyu Fei had obtained. Jiyu Fei was communicating with the ancestral dragon's immortal herb. He only wanted a drop of the ancestral dragon's immortal herb's liquid, but the ancestral dragon's immortal herb kept shaking its head. One had to know that his own medicinal liquid was incomparably precious. A single drop of medicinal liquid could definitely bring someone back to life. An hour later, the immortal ancestral dragon that had transformed into a small ancestral dragon cut the skin of the dragon claw, then poured a drop of medicinal liquid into a small jade bottle and handed it to Ji Yufei. Many thanks. Ji Yufei carefully put away the small jade bottle that contained a drop of immortal ancestral dragon herb. Then, he opened his inner world and sent the immortal ancestral dragon herb back into the depths of his inner world. The black dragon was still lying on his shoulder, seemingly resting with its eyes closed. The subordinates that Ji Yufei had subdued had all entered the depths of the primal chaos Golden Rock Clan's ancestral earth vein to cultivate in seclusion. Even Li Lingfeng had entered the ancestral earth vein. He wanted to use the ancestral earth vein to raise his cultivation to the limit, then return to the human world and rebuild the Supreme Mystery Sect. As for the Extreme Dao Corpse Demon, the Fire Ape Primogenitor, and Zhong Han, the two Extreme Dao Supremes of the Ancestral Earth Vein were also sleeping in the Ancestral Earth Vein. The 108 stone men of the Sword Slaves were also using the essence of the Ancestral Earth Vein to repair their damaged stone-like bodies. With Ji Yufei's current strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to sweep through the entire Ancestral God Realm. The reason why he sent all his subordinates into the Ancestral Earth Vein to cultivate was to deal with the people from the Ancestral God Realm. He had obtained a transportation array platform and a strange stone from the 10,000 God Ancestral City. The transportation array platform was the transportation array platform that led to the Ancestral God Realm, and an unknown creature was sealed in the strange stone. Ji Yufei could go to the Ancestral God Realm, but he knew that the Ancestral God Realm wasn't a good place. One should know that the people from the Ancestral God Realm were extremely powerful, and some were even Extreme Dao Supremes. In other words, there was no shortage of Extreme Dao Supremes in the Ancestral God Realm. Ji Yufei felt great pressure. He believed that the people from the Ancestral God Realm would definitely attack him. He was currently preparing to deal with the people from the Ancestral God Realm and had no time to care about Kang Q. He was already doing Kang Q a favor by sending the demon god and sword slaves to the central continent. Ji Yufei's only worry was that Li Lingfeng had once fallen into the demonic path. Although he had forced out the demonic power from Li Lingfeng's body with his great divine ability, no one could guarantee that Li Lingfeng would never walk the path of the demonic path again. Swoosh! Just as Ji Yufei was deep in thought, a flame suddenly descended from the sky. With a wave of his hand, the flame landed in his hand. Soon, he extinguished the flame in his hand with a claw. Kang Q can't deal with the Pang clan? Ji Yufei muttered to himself. That flame was actually a fire messenger talisman sent to him by demon god Venerable. The speed of the fire messenger talisman was very fast. It actually spread from central continent to east continent. I'll ask Zhong Han to make a trip. With a thought from Ji Yufei, a figure walked out of the void in the next moment. 4,000. It appeared in front of him. Master. Zhong Han bowed to Ji Yufei. Make a trip to the central continent. Ji Yufei took out a divine sword and handed it to Zhong Han. Then, he said, tell Kang Q that if he can't take down the Pang clan's ancestral land, he should obediently go back to the east continent. Yes, Master. Zhong Han excitedly received the sword from Ji Yufei. His hands trembled as he received the sword. The sword was the ancestral god sword Ji Yufei obtained from the ancestral god city in the depths of the graveyard of the gods. The ancestral god sword was the #1 divine weapon in the ancestral god realm. Zhong Han found it hard to believe that his master would hand over such an important sword weapon to him. After receiving the order, Zhong Han immediately left the valley and went to the transportation formation platform in the chaotic Golden Rock Clan's ancestral land. He stepped onto the platform and activated the transportation formation. Swoosh! A ball of divine light emerged from the platform and instantly enveloped Zhong Han. In the next moment, Zhong Han's figure disappeared from the platform. Not long after Zhong Han left, a pitch-black vortex appeared in the sky above the chaotic Golden Rock Clan's ancestral land. The huge vortex shrouded the entire sky. An extremely terrifying aura of destruction spread out from the vortex. All the cultivators in the chaotic Golden Rock clan's ancestral land were stunned. Chapter 3608. Genius 1 second remember love go away. This is a wonderful novel for you to read. Kang Q and the demon god's final battle with the Pang clan's metal element in the central continent's ancestral land was earth-shattering. Countless god realm soldiers from both sides were killed. Blood flowed like a river in the Pang clan's ancestral land. Corpses piled up like a mountain and the thick smell of blood permeated every inch of the void. The ancient battle formation formed by Pang Ge's ancient battle weapon was so powerful that it could block Kang Q's and demon god Venerable's attacks. This kind of battle strength was absolutely heaven-defying. One should know that Kang Q and the demon god had used their supreme sword weapons. The first and fourth progenitors' battle formations also launched a frenzied attack on Pang Ge's ancient battle formation, but they were still blocked by Pang Ge's ancient battle formation. The Celestial God clan and the Black Snake clan's battle formations were fighting with all their might. However, Pang Ge's ancient battle formation only managed to keep the Earth Spirit clans and the Black Snake clan's battle formations in order. Rays of exterminating divine light flew out from Pang Ge's ancient battle formation and pierced through countless soldiers. The soldiers of the Heavenly God clan and the Black Snake clan fell from the sky like dumplings. Kang Q's chaotic Golden Rock clan soldiers were also scattered. Kang Q's eyes turned red when he saw his clansmen dying under the ancient battle formation spears. The chaotic Golden Rock clan had very few clansmen to begin with. Now that so many of them had died, it was unbearable. At this time, the situation seemed to be developing in a direction that was disadvantageous to Kang Q. It was the last step. As long as he defeated the Pang clan, he could become the overlord of Zhengzhou state. If the Pang clan turned the tables now, he would never be the overlord of Zhengzhou state. Kill! Kang Q roared crazily and attacked Pang Ge's ancient battle formation. Me. I didn't expect you to come back to life. Looks like I've underestimated you. Pang Ge was shocked and angry when he saw Kang Q charging towards him. One should know that he had to sacrifice 2 of his supreme divine arrows to kill Kang Q. They thought that Kang Q's body and soul had been destroyed, but who would have thought that Kang Q could still come back to life? Of course, an existence like Kang Q naturally had many tricks up his sleeves. It was not an easy task to kill such an existence. At the same time, demon god Venerable was also making his move. If Kang Q was unlucky, he would be next. Haha, come, I'll send you all on your way. Pang Ge laughed crazily. The ancient battle formation was operating crazily. A terrifying destructive power was heading towards Kang Q and the demon god Venerable. Without any suspense, although Kang Q's extreme Dao God sword broke through the layers of God power, it was still blown away by the ancient battle formation's power. The same went for monster god Venerable. The peerless sword light fell on the ancient battle formation, but the sword light immediately collapsed and he was forced to retreat. Pang Ge's ancient battle formation was simply invincible. Under the power of the extreme path, such a battle strength could actually sweep away all opponents. This was something that no one had ever thought of. How is this possible? Kang Q was in disbelief. He had never believed that there was such an invincible power under the extreme path, but now it seemed that the truth was far stronger than word. At that moment, the sound of wind and thunder came from outside the Pang clan's ancestral land. A terrifying murderous aura came from outside. The murderous aura completely ignored the protective formation of the Pang clan's ancestral land. What? Pang Ge's expression changed when he sensed the aura. The next moment, the protective formation of the entire Pang clan's ancestral land suddenly shook violently. In the next moment, the protective divine light that shrouded the entire ancestral land dissipated in the void. No, Pang Ge was shocked when he saw that. The protective formation of the Pang clan's ancestral land was broken. How was that possible? On this day, too many impossible things had happened. Then, a battle formation composed of only 5,000 people directly attacked the Pang clan's ancestral land. Wherever they passed, countless disciples of the Pang clan died. The battle strength displayed by the battle formation was incredible. This is Kang Q was overjoyed when he saw the battle formation because it was a battle formation personally trained by Ji Yufei. The battle formation was composed of the young and strong clansmen of the Meng clan. Ji Yufei had countless cultivation resources, including the heaven-defying divine spring of life in his inner world. Moreover, there was more than one. The 5,000 battle formation was Ji Yufei's trump card. This time, Ji Yufei's doppelganger brought the 5,000 battle formation to Central Continent but never used it. Just a day ago, this troop finally showed its formidable combat strength and defeated the allied forces in the east region of Zhengzhou state that were loyal to the Pang clan. Of course, that was just a small test. Now, it was time for the battle formation to receive the real test. One should know that the battle formation formed by the Pang clan's ancient battle formation was invincible under the extreme path. Even Kang Q and the demon god could not break it. Behind the 5,000 battle formation, there was a towering death aura that shrouded half of the sky. Within the black death aura, a powerful and terrifying figure could be vaguely seen. It was another battle formation cultivated by Ji Yufei. It was the undead army. 4,000. The three lords of the undead had arrived. It was extremely terrifying. A huge dragon shadow loomed in the death aura. It was a powerful lord of the undead. The figure of Ji Yufei's doppelganger appeared high in the sky, quietly watching the scene in front of him. The battle formation formed by 5,000 battle formation directly collided with Pang Ji's ancient battle formation. A violent explosion occurred as rays of divine light rushed out from each formation and collided with each other. Pang Ji's ancient battle formation had more people. Tens of thousands of ancient battle formation attacked at the same time, but Ji Yufei's battle formation could only block half of the divine light that pierced through it. Ji Yufei's battle formation directly raised the battle shields in their hands. The divine light fell on the battle shields and were all knocked away. It was difficult to break through the battle shields in Ji Yufei's battle formation. Kill. Ji Yufei's 5,000 battle formation roared and raised the battle spears in their hands at the same time. Kill. Pang Ji's ancient battle formation also roared and raised the battle spears in their hands. Two extremely terrifying forces erupted from the two battle formations and collided. In the next moment, the void in front of the two battle formations was instantly annihilated. A scene of destruction appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Everyone in the vicinity hurriedly retreated, because if they were to be affected by the explosion of these two powers, they would definitely die. Even Kang Q and the demon god avoided it. At that moment, a figure appeared next to Ji Yufei's doppelganger. "Greetings, Master." That person knelt down respectfully to Ji Yufei's doppelganger. "Why are you here?" Ji Yufei's doppelganger did not look at the person kneeling behind him because he already knew who it was. Zhonghan had been cultivating in the Earth Ancestor vein in the depths of the Golden Rock clan. This was the first time he left Ji Yufei's side after he was subdued by Ji Yufei and came to the faraway Central Continent. Although there was a connection between Ji Yufei's real body and doppelganger, they were too far apart. Moreover, the real body was in a dominant position compared to the doppelganger. The real body could sense everything about the doppelganger, but the doppelganger could not sense anything about the real body. "It was Master who sent me here," Zhonghan hurriedly said. "You also brought the sword?" Ji Yufei's doppelganger suddenly said in surprise. The 10,000 gods' ancestral sword had been refined by his main body, so he could naturally sense the existence of the 10,000 gods' ancestral sword. Zhonghan hurriedly took out the 10,000 gods' ancestral sword and handed it to Ji Yufei's doppelganger. Ji Yufei's doppelganger took the ancestral god sword and pulled it out. A cold light immediately appeared in front of him. It was so piercing that he couldn't open his eyes. At that moment, the aura of the ultimate divine sword had completely disappeared. Even the divine light on the sword had disappeared. Ji Yufei's doppelganger carefully looked at the 10,000 gods' ancestral sword, then sheathed it and threw it to Zhonghan, who was kneeling on the ground. "Go," Ji Yufei's doppelganger said. "Yes, Master." Zhonghan accepted the order and stood up. In the next moment, Zhonghan's figure disappeared into the void and reappeared in the ancestral land of the Pang clan. This, Kang Q and the beast god were shocked when they saw Zhong Han. They never expected to see Zhong Han in a place like this. Zhong Han had always been by the side of Ji Yufei's main body and would not easily leave Ji Yufei's side. Zhong Han was an extreme grade sovereign of the ancestral god realm, but at this time, the ancestral god realm couldn't display the strength of an extreme grade sovereign. Even if Zhong Han was an extreme grade sovereign, he couldn't display the strength of an extreme grade sovereign. However, Kang Q couldn't help but be shocked when he saw the sword in Zhong Han's hand. The 10,000 gods ancestral sword? What's going on? Daoist Ji Yufei actually gave the 10,000 gods ancestral sword to Zhong Han? Kang Q was in disbelief. The 10,000 gods ancestral sword was known as the #1 divine weapon in the ancestral god realm. How could it be given to a supreme expert of the ancestral god realm? At that moment, Ji Yufei's battle weapon and Pang Ji's ancient battle weapon were fighting. It was difficult to determine the winner in a short time. Everyone was shocked. The battle strength of the battle weapon trained by Ji Yufei was extremely terrifying. A battle formation of 5,000 battle weapons was enough to sweep through the entire ancestral god realm. However, the Great Necromancy formation had yet to be activated. You guys are really useless. Zhong Han glanced at Kang Q and the Demon Divine Lord and said arrogantly, "What did you say?" Kang Q and the Demon Divine Lord were immediately displeased. What did he say? He was so arrogant, but he still had to lower his head in front of Ji Yufei. Zhong Han's arrogant attitude made Kang Q and the Demon Divine Lord very unhappy. At that moment, a black vortex appeared in the sky above the Chaos Golden Rock clan's ancestral land in the East Continent. Then, powerful figures walked out of the vortex. Ancestral god realm? In the depths of the Chaos Golden Rock clan's ancestral land, Ji Yufei stood up from the boulder and looked at the vortex in the sky with a solemn expression. Chapter 3609. A genius in a second. Remember to go away. The web provides you with exciting novels to read. Just as the battle between the East Continent's Divine Clan Army and the Pang Clan Army reached the most crucial moment, a huge black whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sky above the East Continent's chaotic Golden Rock clan. A terrifying aura descended from the black whirlpool, causing the cultivators in the chaotic Golden Rock clan's ancestral ground to be extremely terrified. The chaotic Golden Rock clan's defensive formation was immediately activated. A huge ball of divine light emerged and enveloped the entire Pang clan's ancestral ground. Ancestral realm. At this moment, a figure stood on a huge rock in the depths of the ancestral ground. This person was looking up at the sky with an extremely solemn expression. This person was Ji Yufei. He sensed the aura of the ancestral realm and saw many powerful figures walking out of the black whirlpool. Each figure was surrounded by powerful chaotic aura. 9 extremely powerful figures walked out of the black whirlpool. Ganging up on me. When Ji Yufei saw the other party's formation, he immediately guessed their intentions. The 9 figures walked down from the sky, causing the entire sky to tremble as if it would collapse at any moment. Ji Yufei sneered and did not say anything. He immediately slammed his palm at the 9 figures walking down from the sky. Rumble. A huge hand covered the entire sky and a terrifying force erupted from it. Ji Yufei actually wanted to fight against the 9 experts from the ancestral realm at the same time with his own strength. However, at this moment, a battle spear descended from the sky and pierced through Ji Yufei's huge hand. Then, it stabbed at Ji Yufei. Ji Yufei grabbed the incoming battle spear and threw it back. The battle spear turned into a ray of divine light and instantly pierced through a mysterious figure. What? Ji Yufei couldn't help being startled when he saw this. Could it be that the 9 experts from the ancestral realm were just 9 figures without physical bodies? At this time, the 9 figures attacked at the same time. The heaven-covering palm that Ji Yufei had sent out actually collapsed in the void. The destructive power spread out in all directions. The surrounding void was mercilessly torn apart, shattered, and then annihilated, turning into nothingness. 9 terrifying figures descended from the sky and instantly penetrated the chaotic Golden Rock race's protective formation. They landed around Ji Yufei and surrounded Ji Yufei. What? Ji Yufei couldn't help but be shocked. The 9 figures from the primogenitor realm were able to ignore the Chaos Golden Rock Race's ancestral land's defensive array. How was that possible? Swoosh! A blurry figure suddenly attacked Gu Fei. Although the illusory figure looked very illusory, the battle power that erupted from it was extremely shocking. Bam! Gu Fei's right palm collided with the incoming palm. He only felt a great force colliding with him and he couldn't help but take 2 steps back. At the same time, the blurry figure behind him also attacked. The figure pointed with a finger and dazzling divine light immediately shot out from the tip of his finger. An extremely sharp wave of sword chi erupted from the figure. Playing with swords with me? Gu Fei smiled. In the next moment, his body shook and countless rays of sword light rushed out from his body. Not only did the rays of sword light block the sword wave that shot out from behind him, but they also attacked the figure at the same time. However, the countless rays of sword light directly passed through the figure. The figure was actually not affected at all. How is this possible? Gu Fei was very confused. What kind of existence were these 9 figures? Just as Gu Fei was feeling curious about these fellows, the 9 figures moved and attacked at the same time. In the next moment, a dull collision sound was heard and the 9 figures were sent flying. At this moment, Gu Fei was simply like a terrifying heavenly beast. He actually sent the 9 figures from the primogenitor realm flying. At this moment, Gu Fei knew the actual situation of the 9 figures from the primogenitor realm. They were merely clones of the extreme grade supremes. However, the 9 clones were almost indestructible existences. Unless the main body in the primogenitor realm was killed, the 9 figures would always exist. If you have the guts, come and fight me with your real body. Gu Fei stared at the 9 figures that besieged him again and said coldly. At the same time, an ancient cauldron appeared in his hand and a wave of primordial chaos force erupted from the ancient cauldron. Heh! When the 9 extreme grade supremes saw the ancient cauldron in Gu Fei's hand, they were a little frightened. At the same time, they stopped and stared nervously at the ancient cauldron in Gu Fei's hand. The 9 extreme grade supremes seemed to be a little wary of the mountain and river cauldron in Gu Fei's hand. Gu Fei also noticed this situation, which surprised and delighted him. All of you, come in. Gu Fei patted the mountain and river cauldron in his hand and a heaven-devouring force immediately surged out from the mountain and river cauldron and instantly enveloped the 9 figures. Roar! The 9 extreme grade supremes roared furiously and powerful energy fluctuations erupted from the 9 clones. The devouring force that erupted from the mountain and river cauldron suddenly soared. Rumble! Wherever the devouring force from the mountain and river cauldron enveloped, the void collapsed and was annihilated. It was extremely terrifying. The 9 extreme grade supremes flew up. Although they tried their best to resist the devouring force of the mountain and river cauldron, they still flew towards it in the end. Without any suspense, the 9 extreme grade supremes were directly devoured by the mountain and river cauldron. After the 9 extreme grade supremes were devoured by the mountain and river cauldron, the huge black hole in the sky gradually disappeared. In the ancestral land of the Chaos Golden Rock clan, all the clansmen of the Chaos Golden Rock clan were stunned by this scene. After Gu Fei resolved the crisis in the ancestral land of the Chaos Golden Rock clan, the entire region gradually calmed down and the entire East continent became peaceful again. At this time, only the people of the ancestral realm dared to resist Gu Fei. In the entire East continent of the ancestral god realm, there was no cultivation force that dared to oppose Gu Fei. At this time, in the central continent of the ancestral god realm, the ancestral land of the Pang clan was filled with murderous intent. Countless soldiers were fighting with their lives on the line. Blood flowed like rivers and corpses piled up like mountains. Not only the ancestral land of the Pang clan, but even in the starry sky, there were 2 great experts fighting with their lives on the line. The Sword Slave and Pang Ming had already entered the starry sky. In the starry sky, sword chi and divine power were everywhere. Huge stars were exploding one after another and the entire starry sky was shaking. Heaven Punishing Sword. The Sword Slave displayed his trump card, the Heaven Punishing 9 Swords. A terrifying power of the sword principle erupted from his body, and 9 destructive sword lights rushed out from his body. Wherever the 9 sword lights passed, the void was immediately annihilated. More than a dozen huge stars in the way were instantly turned into ashes. It was extremely terrifying. What? Pang Ming was shocked to see this. He tried his best to dodge, but in the end, he was still slashed by the sword slave and turned into a cloud of blood mist. However, the cloud of blood mist retracted in the next moment and a figure appeared in the void again. However, the sword slave did not give Pang Ming any chance. He slashed out again and the destructive sword light directly hit Pang Ming. In the next moment, Pang Ming's divine body was shattered again. The destructive power of heaven and earth erupted and Pang Ming's body and soul were directly destroyed. After killing Pang Ming, the sword slave directly rushed down from the starry sky and soon arrived in the sky above the ancestral land of the Pang clan. At this time, countless experts in the ancestral land of the Pang clan were attacking Pang Ge's ancient battle formation. Pang Ge's ancient battle formation was rampaging in the ancestral land of the Pang clan. With every attack, a large number of East Continent celestial warriors were killed. Break for me. At this time, Zhong Han made his move. The myriad god ancestral sword in his hand turned into a shocking sword rainbow and directly fell on Pang Ge's ancient battle formation. Defend! Pang Ge roared. In the next moment, every ancient warrior in the ancient battle formation raised the divine shield in their hands at the same time. The sword light from Zhong Han's slash landed on Pang Ge's ancient battle formation. Then, everyone saw an unbelievable scene. The sword light directly broke the defense of the ancient battle formation and split it in half. At this time, the ancient warriors that formed the battle formation finally suffered casualties. This caused Pang Ge, who was in charge of the ancient battle formation, to be inexplicably shocked. How is this possible? Pang Ge hurriedly changed the formation. The ancient battle formation's warriors put down their shields and raised the spears in their hands to attack Zhong Han. Countless divine spears flew out from the ancient battle formation and turned into divine lights that pierced through Zhong Han. Every divine light emitted a powerful divine power. At this time, Zhong Han swung his sword again and the countless divine spears that pierced through the ancient battle formation were directly cut in half. They turned into stubborn iron and fell from the sky. Even Zhong Han was shocked by the power displayed by the myriad god ancestral sword in his hand. The myriad god ancestral sword was so powerful. No wonder it was known as the #1 divine weapon in the ancestral god realm. Even Kang Q, Nai Jingyun, venerable demon god, and other experts looked at Zhong Han differently. Where did this guy find such a powerful supreme Dao artifact? Only a limited number of people knew that Ji Yufei had refined the myriad god ancestral sword in the myriad god ancestral city's city lord's mansion in the depths of the graveyard of gods. Many people did not know that the sword in Zhong Han's hand was the legendary #1 sword in the ancestral god realm. Again, Zhong Han roared and waved the long sword in his hand, fiercely slashing at Pang Ge's ancient battle formation. The indescribably sharp sword light once again tore apart the ancient battle formation's defensive power. Wherever the sword light passed, the ancient battle formation was once again split in half. Chapter 3610. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. TalkNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The might of the myriad gods' ancestral sword far exceeded everyone's imagination. Zhong Han desperately activated the myriad gods' ancestral sword in his hand. With a single slash, a terrifying sword light instantly soared tens of millions of feet, directly splitting Pang Ge's ancient battle formation into two. Love Go Little Say Net W. The ancient battle formation's defensive power could block Kang Q's divine sword and venerable monster's ultimate divine sword, but it could not block the ancestral sword. The ancestral divine realm's #1 ultimate divine weapon was not just for show. Rumble, Pang Ge's ancient battle formation was constantly changing, but Zhong Han's sword had slain hundreds of ancient battle soldiers. Under the myriad god ancestral sword's sword light, these ancient battle soldiers that had lived for countless years had ended up with their bodies and souls destroyed. Preposterous. Pang Ge, who was overseeing the ancient battle formation, was both shocked and furious. This was his final trump card. If he couldn't turn the tables, then all the disciples of the Pang clan would be consigned to eternal damnation. Surrender. At this time, Ji Yufei's doppelganger's voice sounded in Pang Ji's mind. After dealing with those from the ancestral realm, he directly came to Zhongtian City and rushed to the Pang clan's ancestral land. He did not want the Pang clan to be finished like this, and wanted to make one last effort to persuade them to surrender. You want me to surrender and become your slave? Impossible. In the ancient battle formation, Pang Ji roared crazily. At this time, he saw his sword slave, his third brother Pang Ming, die in battle. This almost drove him crazy. Rumble. The ancient battle formation let out a heart-palpitating sound of wind and thunder. Rays of divine light rushed out from the formation, directly piercing the void between heaven and earth. At this time, Pang Ji would rather die than live in Dishana. At worst, he would die in battle. Pang Ji had lost all hope. Under the encirclement of the East Continent's celestial soldiers, the Pang clan's disciples in the ancestral land had been wiped out, leaving only Pang Ji and his ancient battle formation. At this time, even Fatty Pang and his son had died in battle. Ji Yufei's avatar saw Fatty Pang's corpse. This fellow had been pierced in the middle of his eyebrows by a battle spear. He had died just like that, and even his primordial spirit had not been able to escape. This was the cruel reality of the cultivation world. Since they were enemies, it was either you die or I die. There was no room for mercy. Since you don't want to surrender, then there's nothing I can do. Ji Yufei's clone looked at the ancient battle formation in the distance, then shook his head, sighed, and turned to leave. Kill. Seeing that Ji Yufei's clone had left, Zhonghan struck once more. This time, the myriad god ancestral sword in his hand shone with a resplendent divine light. The entire divine sword seemed to have come to life. It transformed into a shocking rainbow and soared into the sky. Then, it descended towards the ancient battle formation. At this time, Zhonghan felt exhausted. Although the myriad god ancestral sword had flown out of his hand, in that instant, the divine sword had absorbed nearly 1/3 of his body's essence chi. The myriad god ancestral sword had to consume a large amount of essence chi to display such great power. Of course, the myriad god ancestral sword did not display the power of the extreme Tao. Even so, it was not something that Pang Ji's ancient battle formation could contend against. The power displayed by the myriad god ancestral sword was absolutely invincible under the extreme Tao. However, the power displayed by Pang Ji's ancient battle formation was also invincible under the extreme Tao. This was a battle between two invincible powers under the extreme Tao. Attack. Pang Ji would not sit and wait for death. Nearly 10,000 ancient soldiers raised their battle spears at the same time. Endless power converged, and a huge phantom of a battle spear appeared in the sky above the ancient battle formation. This was the power of the battle formation condensed together, turning into the phantom of a battle spear. The power emanating from the phantom of the battle spear made one's heart palpitate. Clang. The sword light formed by the myriad god ancestral sword instantly collided with the huge battle spear soaring into the sky, producing a metallic sound. 4,000. Come on. Buzz. Kang Q and the others felt their eardrums hurt. In the next moment, they could not hear anything for the time being. Of course, this was only a temporary deafness. Kang Q and the others quickly regained their hearing. Even so, they were still inexplicably shocked. Then, everyone witnessed a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. They saw the immortal swordlight split the phantom of the battle spear soaring into the sky in half and dissipated in the void. Swoosh! The immortal swordlight fell and directly strangled into Pang Ji's ancient battle formation. A terrifying sword chi fluctuation erupted. In the next moment, bloodlight suddenly appeared. Countless ancient soldiers were killed and tragically destroyed. For a moment, the ancient battle formation was in chaos. Kill. Kang Q, Sword Slave, Demon God, and Nai Jingyun took advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to attack Pang Ji's ancient battle formation. Then, the entire ancient battle formation immediately fell apart. Even Pang Ji, who was in the eye of the formation, was shaken off and vomited blood continuously. With the four of them joining forces, the strength of their attacks was simply too terrifying. Countless ancient weapons were turned into mists of blood. These ancient weapons that had lived for countless years still died on the battlefield. It could be said that they had died a worthy death. After Kang Q and the other four great experts attacked, the battle formation of the Earth Spirit Clan and the Heavenly God Clan also moved. They surrounded and killed the ancient soldiers from all directions. A fierce battle broke out once again. A powerful and terrifying aura spread across the sky and the earth. The murderous aura made one's heart palpitate. It was a one-sided battle. The ancient soldiers of the Pang clan kept falling from the sky. Pang Ji's eyes turned red when he saw this scene. He directly pounced towards Zhong Han. A violent power erupted from his body. Divine light circled around his body like a dancing divine flame. At this time, the 10,000 gods' ancestral sword flew up. With a flash of sword light, Pang Ji was cut in half. His corpse fell from the sky. An incomparably powerful ancestor of the Pang clan was killed just like that. All the experts who saw this scene were dumbfounded. One should know that Pang Ji was one of the three great ancestors of the Pang clan. His cultivation was extremely powerful. At this time, Zhong Han grabbed the 10,000 gods' ancestral sword that flew back. He was extremely excited. The power displayed by this supreme divine sword made his heart palpitate. The power displayed by the 10,000 gods' ancestral sword was much stronger than an ordinary supreme Dao weapon. There was no suspense about what happened next. The remaining ancient soldiers did not surrender just because Pang Ji was killed. All the ancient soldiers of the Pang clan fought to the end. Even though they knew that they would die, they still fought to the end. This scene moved Kang Q and the others. As the last ancient soldier of the Pang clan fell, the war that affected the entire central continent finally came to an end. The Pang clan was actually annihilated. The entire central continent's cultivation world ushered in the most turbulent day. At this time, the forces that stood on the right side secretly rejoiced. The Shimen clan was even more surprised and happy. The Shimen clan was really going to rise. The battle formation of the Shimen clan had also participated in the battle against the remnants of the Pang clan. Many of them died. In front of the East Continent's Celestial Clan army, the soldiers of the Shimen clan were not very powerful. However, their indomitable momentum made the other forces feel a little incredulous. After conquering the ancestral land of the Pang clan, Kang Q was a little unhappy. One should know that his losses were also very great. He almost died. After the war, the ancestral land of the Pang clan was severely damaged and needed to be repaired. Kang Q personally guarded the ancestral land of the Pang clan. One should know that the ancestral land of the Pang clan was a peerless treasure land. Many people were envious of it. The place that he had painstakingly conquered could not be occupied by others. After the news of the Pang clan's annihilation spread, countless cultivation forces in the central continent came to the ancestral land of the Pang clan. They all wanted to rely on Kang Q. In an instant, there were many cultivators near the ancestral land of the Pang clan. It became lively all of a sudden. However, the smell of blood in the ancestral land of the Pang clan made all the cultivators' hearts palpitate. The war had just ended. Now, in the Zhongzhou state, except for the Kanglan clan that never appeared in the world, Kang Q's chaotic Golden Rock clan had become the overlord of the Zhongzhou state. As various forces scrambled to join them, the turmoil in the Zhongzhou state gradually calmed down. At this time, in the central continent, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan, the commander of the Celestial Army of the South Continent, received the news that the Pang clan had been annihilated. His expression became incomparably solemn. After Kang Q's chaotic Golden Rock clan lost the Pang clan, it was very likely that they would attack them. One must know that the Celestial Army of the South Continent would not retreat so easily. However, two tigers cannot live on the same mountain. In the end, the East Continent's army and the South Continent's army could only use force to determine the winner. At this time, Saber Emperor Yi Jingshan looked up at the altar in the sky. The altar began to emit a faint energy fluctuation, as if someone was climbing out of it. Why is it taking so long? The Saber Emperor retracted his gaze and pondered. The South Continent's army occupied Nantian City, which was easy to defend and difficult to attack. Once the city protection formation was activated, ordinary quasi-supremes would not be able to break it and enter the city. Moreover, the true commander of the Celestial Army of the South Continent, Nan Batian, was still alive. Soon, countless cultivators in the 5 major regions of the ancestral god realm were talking about the annihilation of the Pang clan. Some time ago, the Heavenly Fire clan was annihilated by the Pang clan. It was really a reversal of fortune. No one would have thought that even the Pang clan would be annihilated so soon. In Zhongtian City, Ji Yufei's doppelganger was leisurely sipping tea in the courtyard behind the city lord's mansion. The demon god and the sword slave had also returned to Zhongtian City. The entire Zhongtian City was very quiet. The ordinary people in the city were still hiding in their houses. Only a few people walked on the streets, and most of the people walking on the streets were cultivators. As the war ended, the cultivation world of the ancestral god realm was still in turmoil. At this time, in the ancestral land of the Pang clan, Kang Qiu was gathering other experts. He was going to attack the forces of the South Continent in Nantian City in the southern part of the Central Continent. Chapter 36:11. The East Continent's God Clan army led by Kang Qiu finally defeated the Pang clan, one of the 3 superpowers of Central Continent, and became the overlord of Central Continent. Although Kang Qiu's chaotic Golden Rock clan wasn't the only superpower in Central Continent now, they weren't far behind. The Kanglan clan had a transcendent status and wouldn't contend for hegemony. The original Central Continent was a tripartite balance of power. Now that the Skyfire clan and the Pang clan had been destroyed, only the Kanglan clan was left of the original 3 superpowers. Kang Qiu naturally wouldn't be stupid enough to provoke the Kanglan clan. The Kanglan clan's status in Central Continent was incomparably transcendent. Neither the Pang clan nor the Skyfire clan dared to provoke them. The Kanglan clan was originally the most powerful of the 3 superpowers of Central Continent. At this time, Kang Qiu attacked the Pang clan's ancestral land and began to repair it. The Pang clan's ancestral land had changed owners, but it was still a treasured land because it was where the ancestral veins of the earth gathered. There were only 3 such places in the entire Central Continent. The best one was the Kanglan clan's ancestral land, which was the source of the ancestral veins of Central Continent. The Pang clan's ancestral land was only a branch of the ancestral veins of the earth. Even so, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here was extremely thick. Cultivating in such a place could naturally achieve twice the result with half the effort. This was a treasured cultivation land that cultivators dreamed of, but the current owner of this land was Kang Qiu. At this time, Ji Yufei's doppelganger returned to Zhongtian City and continued to live a semi-secluded and carefree life. At his level of cultivation, it was very difficult to make a breakthrough in cultivation by blindly cultivating. At this time, he wouldn't deliberately cultivate. Everything was fine. Dongtian City had completely calmed down. There were fewer cultivators in the city, but the mortals in the city still went to work at sunrise and returned at sunset. They weren't affected much. On this day, Shimon Yijian came to Dongtian City and went directly to the city lord's mansion to see his master, Ji Yufei's doppelganger. Master. Shimon Yijian walked into the quiet and secluded courtyard behind the city lord's mansion and saw Ji Yufei's clone leisurely sipping tea beside a stone table under a big tree. At that moment, Ji Yufei's doppelganger was bored as the sword slave and demon divine lord were not by his side. The sword slave and the demon god were still in Zhongzhou state. Although Zhongzhou state seemed to be calm on the surface, it was actually the most vulnerable time for something to go wrong. The Pang clan was defeated and exterminated. This was something that most people would never have imagined, because the Pang clan's foundation was just too deep. However, who knew that Kang Qiu's strength was also extremely powerful, and he even had the support of the fierce Ji Yufei. Even the Pang clan would be unlucky. What are you doing here? Ji Yufei was slightly surprised by Shimon Yijian's arrival. Wasn't this fellow following the sword slave and pestering the sword slave to learn the sword slave's 9 heaven punishing swords? The 9 heaven punishing swords was definitely one of the best cultivation techniques in the sword Dao. Back then, the The sword slave entered the Tao through killing and created this sword Tao cultivation technique. It was unknown how many living beings had died under his sword. As a sword cultivator, Shimon Ijian naturally wanted to learn the 9 heaven punishing swords, but the sword slave had no time to care about this little fellow. At that moment, the undercurrents were surging in Zhengzhou state. It was unknown how many people were eyeing the big fat piece of meat that was Zhengzhou state, and many of them wanted to take a bite. However, not everyone was qualified to have any ideas about this fat piece of meat. There were less than 5 people in the entire ancestral god realm who dared to have any ideas about this fat piece of meat. Master, please teach me the 9 heaven punishing swords. Shimon Ijian immediately knelt in front of Ji Yufei's clone when he saw Ji Yufei's clone. You want to learn the 9 heaven punishing swords? Ji Yufei's clone was leisurely sipping his tea. He enjoyed this kind of life very much. Yes. Shimon Ijian said resolutely. Ji Yufei's clone thought for a moment, then said, all right, as you wish. I hope you won't regret it. After saying that, Ji Yufei pointed a finger at Shimon Ijian's forehead. A ball of spiritual light appeared at the tip of his finger, and that ball of spiritual light directly rushed into Shimon Ijian's head. In the next moment, Shimon Ijian only felt dizzy, and then many things appeared in his head. This was the cultivation technique of the 9 heaven punishing swords. He quickly sat down cross-legged and directly comprehended the cultivation technique of the 9 heaven punishing swords that appeared in his head. Soon, Shimon Ijian entered into cultivation. His entire body seemed to have turned into a stone statue, not moving an inch. It had to be said that Shimon Ijian was very talented in the sword principle. Ji Yufei's clone had good foresight. Shimon Ijian was a fellow worthy of being nurtured. Ji Yufei's clone didn't pay any more attention to Shimon Ijian. He allowed him to cultivate and comprehend the extreme sword principle divine ability that used killing to enter the Tao. Shimon Ijian wanted to walk the path of a sword slave, but this was definitely a path full of killing. Who knew how many creatures would die under his sword? Of course, these things had nothing to do with Ji Yufei. This was the path that Shimon Ijian wanted to walk, not the path that he wanted to walk. At this time, in the central continent, in the ancestral land of the Pang clan, Kang Qiu was discussing the next step with the experts of the various clans. It seemed that the next step was to take action against those fellows from the South Continent. Those fellows from the South Continent occupied Nantian City. This was something that Kang Qiu couldn't accept because Nantian City originally belonged to the Pang clan. Now that Kang Qiu's army of the East Continent had defeated the Pang clan, they naturally had to take over all the territories that originally belonged to the Pang clan. Daoist Kang Qiu, if we attack those fellows from the South Continent now, wouldn't it be a bit too fast? The clan lord of the Celestial God clan asked. In a hall in the ancestral land of the Pang clan, Kang Qiu sat on a throne in the middle of the hall. On both sides of the throne were the clan lords and patriarchs of the various clans. We need time to recuperate, said the clan lord of the Black Snake clan. The Black Snake clan had suffered heavy losses in this war. The celestial clan army of the Black Snake clan was almost wiped out by the ancient battle formation of the Pang clan. Now, the celestial clan army of the Black Snake clan had less than 5,000 people left. The clan lord of the Black Snake clan really didn't want to fight anymore. If they did, the celestial clan army of the Black Snake clan that had come to the central continent would really be annihilated. Kang Qiu glanced at the 4 great ancestors of the Earth Spirit clan who had been silent all this time. We might as well uproot all the resistance forces in one go. That way, we can sleep in peace. The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan glanced at everyone in the hall and said, "That's right. With our strength, do you think we can't defeat those fellows from the South Continent?" The second ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan agreed. "You guys really don't have a problem with words. People will die if we go against those people from the South Continent. If you guys aren't afraid of death, go ahead. We won't follow you to your deaths." The clan lord of the Black Snake clan said unhappily, "TSK, coward." The fourth ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan looked at the clan lord of the Black Snake clan in disdain and said, "You can be the leader of a clan with that kind of attitude?" The third ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan said in disdain, What did you say? The clan lord of the Black Snake clan got goosebumps when he heard the third ancestor's words. He stood up from his seat and stared at the third ancestor fiercely. The third ancestor sneered. You want to fight? Bring it on. Even if there are 10 of you, I will kill all of you. Roar. The clan lord of the Black Snake clan roared and was about to pounce towards the third ancestor. Enough. Kang Q slapped the handle of the throne. He was displeased. These fellows actually want to fight among themselves. That was ridiculous. Moreover, it was happening in front of him. The clan lord of the Black Snake clan who was about to attack immediately stopped. Who would dare to disobey Kang Q's order? The clan lord of the Black Snake clan glared at the third ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan and sat down. If you have the courage, go and kill the enemies. Don't fight among yourselves here. Kang Q glanced at the experts in the hall with a terrifyingly gloomy expression. Brother Kang Q, are you really going to attack the soldiers of the South Continent? Nai Jingyun suddenly said. That's right. Kang Q was very straightforward. How could he let those fellows from the South Continent occupy Nantian City? To reclaim Nantian City, he would have to start a war with the forces of the South Continent. Then let's do it. Demon Divine Venerable said. He represented Gu Fei's doppelganger. With him speaking, no one dared to say no. Then it's decided. The first ancestor of the Earth Spirit clan looked at the crowd and said. Kang Q thought for a while and said, then let's do it in the evening 3 days later. 3 days to prepare was enough. No one in the hall said anything else. Kang Q stood up, turned around, and walked into the back hall, leaving the clan lords and other experts in the hall looking at each other, not knowing what to do. Although the clan lord of the Black Snake clan did not want to fight anymore, he had no choice but to bite the bullet and fight. The clan lord of the Celestial God clan also did not want to fight anymore. If they did, they might become cannon fodder. How could an existence like him be cannon fodder? At this time, no one knew that Kang Q would attack the Protoss soldiers of the South Continent so soon. However, the news soon spread, which made Kang Q furious. Someone actually dared to spread the news, which made him feel like he was going crazy. The higher-ups of the Protoss soldiers of the South Continent also received the news. The atmosphere in Nantian City immediately became tense. One should know that Kang Q had just defeated the Pang clan. If the Protoss soldiers of the East Continent came, they might be able to stop them. One should know that the Protoss soldiers of the South Continent were not weaker than the Protoss soldiers of the East Continent. The title of Blade Emperor Yi Jingshan was not just for show. Finally, I can fight Yi Jingshan. A figure sat cross-legged on a boulder on a mountain peak in the ancestral land of the Pang clan. This person was the East Continent Blade ancestor Nai Jingyun.